All right, welcome to Vicious Talk with Benny P. Coming up, episode 63 underway, our Super Bowl special. Connor Larson and I are back to do our NFL analysis, some previews for the big game coming up. But before we get too far into it, Connor, welcome back to the podcast, buddy.
Hey, what's poppin', Benny?
What's poppin', man? Good to see your pretty face. Looking forward to this big game, man. And we got some great analysis and just the reverberating theme that I kept coming across while preparing for this episode was just how great this game seems to stack up on paper. I'm really looking forward to how this is going to play out, because on paper this game looks very close and very competitive. Some very interesting narratives that we'll go over. We're going to touch on some prop bets we like, and we're going to touch on a lot of the different X factors to look for during this big matchup. And then we'll touch on some DFS selections for anybody looking to play some DraftKings or FanDuel lineups on Sunday. But Connor, there's a lot been going on in the sports world. We're gonna keep this episode to strictly football, and let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in the NFL, because I don't know how you could talk about football without touching on some of the big stuff that's been going on in the league. Because it's like, can't we just wait to the offseason? Like, can we not make trades and like have all this offseason buzz before the Super Bowl is even played out? Like, we got the Stafford and Jared Goff trade with the Rams and the Lions, and then we also have the narrative, the storyline with Deshaun Watson. And it seems like a pending trade or an impending trade is inevitable at this point because of the threat of him, saying that he might sit out games or he might sit out until he's traded. So, Connor, where do you want to start? Which one do you have an opinion you want to share with first?
Well, let's start off with the trade that's actually happened. I think that makes sense to evaluate first. So we had Jared Goff for Matt Stafford, a couple of first rounders, and I think it was a third. Quite a haul when you consider that the Rams are taking on the older player in this situation, and
33.
they're the ones giving up a ton of contracts. And it's not like Matt Stafford has had a really lightly used and injury-free career. I mean, this guy has broken his back on multiple occasions, literally. And I think the video that's circulating right now is one where he snaps his collarbone and remains in the game. I don't know if this is the quarterback where I'm willing to stake my entire organization's reputation on and give up the future, considering they're giving up even more draft picks. A team that's been without a first-round draft pick since Jared Goff.
Yeah.
So they're taking on the older player, and they're risking it all.
They're not going to have a first-round draft pick until, I think, 2024? Is that what it is? Another two drafts ahead with no first round pick, right? For the Rams?
Yeah, they gave up a couple for Jalen Ramsey, and so they're really just going all in on the next couple of years.
And you have one for him.
I mean, do you really think that Matt Stafford is in the upper echelon of quarterbacks anymore at this stage of his career? I tend not to think so based on the wear on his tires, and I don't know if I would have given up quite that same haul. Jared Goff has shown some promise in development. I don't think he was the savior, but by no means would I risk my organization like this. Now, they have a scary defense. They're definitely the best defense in the league, in my opinion. And a lot of the metrics would point to that. So I do think it makes sense to give it what you can with this offense, but I just don't think it's really going to be enough for them to contend for a Super Bowl. And I really think that they're setting their team back a few years going out once Stafford retires, because I don't think it's a guy you want to have on your team for the next 5. I don't think he's going to have that Tom Brady longevity. By no means is he had nearly the same focus on health and fitness and had the same injury history.
I feel you, I understand your take, and I part of me feels the same way. But I'm a little more optimistic about Stafford and his ability to come into Los Angeles and perform at a high level. I mean, talent wise, there's no question he's one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, talent wise, he's easily a top 10, easily. Almost everybody, if you make all else equal, everybody's healthy, and you just talk about who's the most talented quarterback in the NFL. You have to have Matt Stafford in your top 10. If you don't, you're probably wrong. And the big X factor, obviously, and you touched on it, is the health. And he's had loads of injuries throughout his career. The thing with that, though, is his ability to play through the injuries. And so I mean, it's not necessarily something you want to bank on. You don't want to bank on someone having to play through a broken collarbone or a broken back. Like that's not that's severe stuff, you know. And he's done it all. And the guy is quite the bulldog. I mean, dating back to his days with Georgia, he had some injuries there. And the guy just is a gamer, and he plays to win. And I talked about it earlier this season on a podcast. I remember touching on Matt Stafford and saying, you know, the guy's so talented that it's a shame that we haven't seen him play in more competitive games throughout his career. And so that's what I'm most excited about with this trade is we get to see Matt Stafford, you know, show his stuff. We're going to get to see him. There's no excuses now. Detroit was bad for a long time. You didn't make the playoffs. Did he make the playoffs at all throughout his career? I don't think he has.
They did
And
make the playoffs. He hasn't won a playoff game though.
okay. So he hasn't won a playoff game. And now if the Rams don't make the playoffs, it's a disappointment. So I think that what the Rams are thinking, obviously, is they're going all in. They're pushing all their cards onto the table. All their chips are in the middle of the table now, and you know they got Jalen Ramsey, who's in his prime. You got Aaron Donald in his prime. You got Cam Akers, a young running back, a blossoming. You have a good offensive line. You have wide receivers who are. I mean, that's two that the Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp wide receiver tandem is one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. I mean, you put them right alongside like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Who am I missing? There's a lot of good ones out there.
Julio and Calvin.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good tandems out there, but Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp have to be considered amongst those top tier, tandems. And so now Stafford has, the weapons to succeed on offense, and we'll see if he could do it. And hopefully the offensive line can protect him well enough to keep him healthy long enough to make a playoff run. It'll be interesting to see how this affects the Rams going forward. Like you said, their future, it's mortgaged on the present, and we'll see if they're able to, they made the Super Bowl against the Patriots 2 years ago. They were a good team again this year, but it seemed like Jared Goff was the odd man out, the guy that was holding them back. And I know he played pretty well against the Packers, and when they lost, and that loss wasn't completely his fault, but you could see at the end, man, McVay, he gave up on him. He's like, man, I cannot have this guy leading my offense and complete what I want to do on offense. Like McVay is such an offensive genius that he probably has, half of his playbook or half of his play ideas for his offensive attack that he would like to do. Half of them probably get crossed out when you say Jared Goff is my quarterback. So, it'll be interesting to see if he opens up the playbook now, if there's more available to him, if the Rams get even more creative on offense. And I hopefully it's a fun occurrence. I also kind of like the move for Goff going to Detroit. He's got a chip on his shoulder now. He had the starting gig handed to him in Los Angeles. He had, he was the first overall pick. He had the pedigree of that. He had, everybody in his corner from the start. You draft the guy first overall, especially your quarterback in the NFL. You gotta invest in him. You gotta bank on him being the guy. You can't draft the guy first overall and quickly, decide, he's not our guy. You invested a lot in them, and they were paying him, a lot. So it's nice to get out from under that contract, and we'll see how it turns out. Hopefully, it's a beneficial trade for both sides. I think that the Rams should be a fun team next year. Hopefully, the NFC West, man, just keeps getting more competitive.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is purely on the logistics of the trade and whether I think a team got a better deal or not. Now, looking at the teams next year, who do I think is better off? I certainly think the Rams are. I think that Stafford is an upgrade. I think they just paid a really hefty price to get that guy.
Well,
but
from my understanding it seems like there were other teams that thought they had Stafford. There was at least one other team that I heard, and Mike Lombardi couldn't reveal his sources and who it was, but he was saying that there was another team that basically thought they had Matt Stafford. They had a trade-in agreement, and the Rams must have just upped the offer or something.
Well, what I was hearing is that Stafford really wanted to end up in LA, and that was a big thing for him. And not only the city, but you consider the team and the circumstances. You mentioned the wide receiver duo. I don't think there's a more friendly wide receiver duo. Now, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp aren't necessarily the most explosive wide receivers, but absolutely fantastic route runners that are going to be consistently open, and they're great yards after the catch guys. So they're going to move the chains even in comfortable passing situations. He's not going to have to push it too deep downfield. McVay is going to drop some awesome schemes to get guys open in the open field. Tons of playmakers, and you have a defense that's going to keep you in every game. So if you're Matt Stafford and you're evaluating the open quarterback positions, I don't know if there's a better place to land than LA if I'm him.
That's a good point. Yeah, I agree with you there. It'll be fun to see. I think that the Rams are definitely, investing. They got to make the Super Bowl. They got to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years or so.
Right.
And if they don't, this trade's probably going to be in hindsight a failure, or a trade that you look back on with a little bit of regret. And
Yeah, it's going to weigh on them for years after once Matt Stafford's out of the league, because they're just going to miss out on that developmental crop of players that could be the basis of their future. Instead, they're just betting it all now, which is okay. But the thing is, you got to win now, too. It's kind of like what Toronto did, grabbing Kawhi for a year. You're taking that bet and you're betting that you're going to win now. It worked out for them. Does it work out for the Rams? That's yet to be seen.
I like that. That's not a bad comparison. One thing with Stafford, his wife is coming to LA. She's got to wear that mask. She's not about the masks in Detroit. She was not happy.
You thought Detroit was rough. Get ready for LA, man.
Right? Exactly.
Whew. You would know better than most.
Yeah, being in LA. Deshaun Watson, the in my opinion, the biggest storyline besides the Super Bowl right now in the NFL. A guy who, in my opinion, is one of the top 5 most valuable players in the NFL right now. And that kind of player, that kind of talent doesn't come available on the trade market often. And I know we've touched upon this a little bit on some previous football podcasts over the last few weeks, but it's coming to a head. It seems like with Watson, there was a lot of discussion of the turmoil between the two teams. Could they work it out? Because it seems like you got to. I mean, if you're Houston, you have to try to make this work out, because you don't trade a guy like Watson. You can't. And it's
Certainly
just
don't want to.
It's interesting that we're seeing this, this culture of that we've seen in the NBA and basketball with players, superstar players are able to control their own destinies, like a James Harden and Anthony Davis.
Right. Same city, literally,
Yeah. So, we're seeing that those themes in the NBA, and we're starting to see that leak over into the NFL now. And it's interesting to see how it's going to be perceived. I mean, a guy like Dak Prescott might be someone who maybe takes the reins on his future if he comes back to Dallas on a franchise tag again next year. If he has a good year next year, who's to say he wouldn't do the same thing with that Deshaun Watson is doing right now? And I'm not saying Dallas has as much chaos and turmoil within their organization as Houston does, because clearly Houston has issues. I mean, did you see the statements from Andre Johnson, the longtime superstar? Like, is he a Hall of Famer, Andre Johnson? He was born.
Oh, absolutely. Retired number for Houston. Everything.
Yeah.
Guy's a stud.
And the guy's a Houston, favorite. He's on a Mount Rushmore of Houston athletes, and
did he play his whole career there?
Yeah, I believe he did. And he was the one saying, like, Watson, get your bread, get out of there. Like, they're not going to be helping you. They're not,
right, JJ Watt. Did you see that clip walking off the field with Deshaun at the end of the season? Like, sorry, man. Like, this organization blew one of your prime years. You should be 11-5 every single season. He literally is an MVP caliber quarterback, and he's just stuck on a team that misused their assets and did not build around him. And it's a complete injustice to do that to a guy who with that amount of talent. Mm-hmm. It's like being handed to LeBron James and then just not trying to put anybody else on the team and putting him on an island. It's almost like Bradley Beal in Washington for all those years, where he was just kind of the guy and he would go off and put up these huge stats, but he literally had no supporting cast.
Totally. It's a shame that Houston has to be ashamed of themselves. I mean, they just brought in a new GM, and they haven't hired a new head coach yet, and they don't know what the direction of their team is going to be. Why would a head coach even go there? Why? Like, it seems like the only thing that Houston can do with this head coaching vacancy they have is they got to hire a young guy. They got to hire somebody, a wild card, a guy maybe like a Lincoln Riley out of Oklahoma or something like that, or somebody who's just going to be some sort of wild card that could, just be completely dominant in the way that they think innovatively, and the way that they think, like, in a modern sense, a coach that isn't necessarily on everybody's radar, like Eric Bieniemy, or I don't know. There's been a lot of candidates thrown around for Houston.
They hired David Culley.
Oh, they did. Did I miss that? When was
Yep,
that?
I believe yesterday.
Oh, okay.
He was a former coach on the Baltimore Ravens.
So
And
boring.
it
So.
doesn't seem
Oh, you're
like
right.
it's going to change Deshaun Watson's decision at
Yeah.
all.
Why would this? Why would this change his mind? That.
Nothing about what he's posted on Twitter or social media in the past few hours, past day, has indicated that this decision is going to change his mind in terms of requesting a trade. So it really is kind of a no news. So I'm not even surprised you didn't hear,
Right.
Ben,
I didn't
because
even hear it.
doesn't really matter. I mean, this is the type of hire you would expect for a team with a guy who seems like he's on his way out at quarterback. And there's really a lot of questions up in the air. Now, the messages we were hearing from the organization and the new head coach is Deshaun Watson's our quarterback until we say otherwise.
He
Well,
ain't gonna be
it
playing.
it doesn't sound like you might have a choice. You might want to play hardball, but I'm not sure if that's going to get your superstar quarterback back to buying in on a team that's mistreated him for years. You can't take a dog that you kicked around and immediately expect it to love you. You got to show it some treats and some love first to get it back and on the right side and to
That
appreciate you,
relationship might be irreparable. That
I don't
relationship
think
might be
I
irreparable.
really think he needs to go to a new team and just lead a new situation and honestly be appreciated the way he deserves as a top talent and a leader.
Yeah. Well, Houston on the bright side with that, I mean, they should have every team as a suitor, basically, as for a trade partner, possible potential trade partner. I mean, I've talked about this previously, where there really shouldn't be a limit to what you would be willing to give up for Deshaun Watson. Really, I mean, if you're the Washington football team, I'm probably going to give up Chase Young for him. If you're, who's another young stud that's in the league? I mean, if you're, I don't know, I'm drawing a blank in terms of players, but the point is, there's really not a trade package I wouldn't consider for a guy like Deshaun Watson. Because if you're like San Francisco, he's the kind of guy that I might give up Nick Bosa for. And I know that's a lot to think about. I mean, Nick Bosa being one of the best defensive players in the NFL, Deshaun Watson is the kind of guy that gets your team to a Super Bowl. And Houston is just they have a guy that they really need to, if they can't repair this relationship, they need to get a haul of picks and at least one or two young premier players on defense or on offense. And we'll see what they get. We'll see what happens. What did you have any thoughts on? Did you see the Brett Favre statements about what he was saying yesterday? Any thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
I saw Brett Favre and Dick Vermeil made a couple of statements about how, back in their day, you kind of just dealt with the situation you were handed and you just tried to make the best of it. But it's funny words coming from a guy who retired three different times to be able to switch organizations and be able to manipulate the system. So Deshaun Watson just being upfront and saying it out loud, he's not going around and hiding his true intentions behind his different methods to be able to switch teams. So Brett, I don't think you really should be casting stones in a glass house. Um,
Funny.
I think that we need to empower the players to be able to have a choice and say where they want to live, where they want to play. I mean, the system just seems outdated. I
That
don't know any other career where they can absolutely force you to play if you want to participate. I don't know any other world where if I wanted to become a financial analyst, there was a financial analyst draft and I could just be drafted to a city that I never wanted to go to and had no connections at. So I think it's just completely outdated. I think the owners have been set in their ways and been comfortable, and they've made a shit ton of money taking advantage of players. And I think people are starting to recognize this is not the way.
had real shut up and dribble vibes from the that LeBron thing, and I don't know. It was not a good look for Favre getting into the news for the wrong reasons in that interview, but I don't know. It's hard to figure out why he would say that, because it's like you see where the sport's going now. You
Yeah.
see what athletes are capable of. Now, I know back when Favre played, athletes, were just athletes and they didn't really get
Mhm.
involved in much in pop culture, but especially with social media and just the ability for athletes to interact with their fans and be, more involved with their communities and just be more interaction with the fans of the sport and their team and their city. There's an ability for these athletes to voice their opinions and their feelings on their social justice issues and community problems and political things. And it's their right. They have a fan base. They have people that follow them. It's their right to, use their public perception to voice what they feel is right. And you could like it or not, but I don't think you're gonna win the argument telling them to shut up and keep their mouth shut and just play the game. I don't think you're gonna please a lot of people saying that kind of stuff.
I mean, the fact of the matter is we play in a completely different time period where the social media, the connectivity, and the expectations of athletes are completely different from when Brett Favre played as well. So, it's
Can
not
you
fair for
imagine
him to
it?
cast aspersions in that
Can you
manner.
imagine if Favre played with the social media presence being what it is now? I'm like all those. Am I retiring? I don't know. I'm considering retirement. I'm actually no. I'm back. I'm out and I'm back. And then you can imagine how much ridicule
Yeah.
and how much hate he would get on Twitter for all that kind of stuff. So you're right. He's living in a glass house and he's throwing stones, and not the greatest strategy.
But to play devil's advocate, um, I do feel bad for the guys who joined the Texans thinking Deshaun Watson was going to be the
Yes,
quarterback. You feel for a guy like Brandon Cooks who joined last year thinking Deshaun's going to be there for the next few years, and he completely rejuvenated his career. He was cast out of LA, after his concussions, and everybody thought he was going to go completely down the tubes, and he was one of an absolute breakout and return to dominance as a wide receiver, frankly, with Deshaun. And so since situations like that, in Houston where we had John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins joining a team and then getting completely dissed by a player. Now, Deshaun Watson hasn't said anything negative about his former teammates by any means. But you do feel bad for the guys who joined the team thinking that, okay, no matter what, we have Deshaun Watson as our quarterback. We have a chance this year if we get a couple other pieces around us.
totally.
And the guy, the kids who bought the Deshaun Watson jerseys and the rookie cards and
Yeah. And
who just
and I
wanted to live their entire career with this guy as their quarterback for 15 years.
Yeah, and I feel for Watt. I mean, Watt's one of the most classy and likable players in this sport, and someone that you would want to see him, finish his career strong and on a team that's competing for championships. And that's just not going to be the case in Houston. It's not. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. Connor,
Deshaun, rooting for the best, man, though. Good luck to
yeah,
you, man.
I just want to
Hope
see.
you
I
land in
want
a
to
better
see
spot.
Deshaun Ball. It'll be the worst case scenario is he stays in Houston and he sits out because no one wants that. Nobody wins that. So
Let's pair him up with Allen Robinson and get those both guys the quarterback and wide receiver they deserve,
yeah, speak that into existence.
Please.
Okay, buddy. That's some NFL news. Let's transition into our big topic for the podcast. We got really just one hell of a historic Super Bowl matchup. Super Bowl 55. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Chiefs are the favorites coming into the Super Bowl matchup. -3 is the spread. Saw it open up, I think, at 3.5. Chiefs -3.5, and it's been bet down to -3. The over/under point total I see is at 56 right now. And this is a Titan versus Titan type of matchup. This is two teams really just hitting their peak of their seasons right now. They're both playing their best football they've played all year at this moment. And let's talk about some of the biggest narratives coming to this game because we have a lot of big themes in this one. And my thoughts were in the conference championship that I didn't really want to see this matchup because I think what it was in my head was, I just didn't want to see the Chiefs roll through everybody again. I don't want to see the Chiefs, just no one want. I mean, it's cool to see a first if they win it. It would be cool to see a team, the first team go back to back since the Tom Brady Patriots did it, and was it 03, 04, I believe, and the I just something about that just didn't really resonate with me. That I just didn't really want to. It seemed boring. But the thing with the Chiefs is, you watch them and they're just such an exciting brand of football. They're just very exciting, very young, very modern, and the biggest narrative for me coming to this game is the story between the offenses for these two teams. I mean, you got Mahomes, who's possibly one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to become. He's a baby goat, you call him, versus Tom Brady, who is the goat. He's the seasoned veteran, the 43-year-old greatest quarterback of all time. The guy undoubtedly is the greatest player to ever step on a football field, at least when you look at the scope of his accomplishments, what he's been able to do over the course of his 20-plus year career. And a guy who is just been constantly in the spotlight of the NFL stardom and the success. He's just set the standard for success throughout his entire tenure in the NFL. And for me, that's the ultimate storyline between. If I had to create a picture of what this Super Bowl matchup is, it's Brady versus Mahomes, baby goat versus goat. So because the winner of this will always have that feather in their cap that they beat the other one. That Tom
Right.
Brady either beat Mahomes, so Tom Brady will always be the GOAT, or Mahomes beat Brady. And then he has the opportunity to flourish throughout his long career, hopefully,
It
and
seems
become
inevitable at
eventually.
this point.
Yeah,
Those comparisons are going to come about. The LeBron
exactly.
versus Jordan, except LeBron never played
Right?
Jordan.
Imagine if Jordan played LeBron.
Right.
That's what this is. That's what this is almost.
In the
Imagine
Super Bowl, in the NBA
in the
championship,
yeah,
right? At the highest of the highest peaks, one guy obviously different points of their careers, but the fact that we get to witness this is
it's
amazing.
crazy. I'm mad at myself that I didn't want this matchup from the start. I think that this is the most fun matchup we could possibly have, and part of it really is the way that both these teams played in the conference championship round. Both these teams played very well. I mean,
Right.
the Chiefs just absolutely dominated the Bills, and I wanted to support the underdog Buffalo Bills last or 2 weeks ago, and they couldn't keep up with the pedigree and the championship caliber team that the Chiefs are, and the Buccaneers defense really shut up that historically excellent Green Bay offense. That Green Bay's, like we said, Green Bay had the best offense in the NFL this year. They had the top ranked offense, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense really came to play. And we were talking about that in our handicapping for the game last or 2 weeks ago. That you know if Tampa Bay were to win that game, we were going to be talking about a lot of Devin White, talking about a lot of how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense was able to stifle the Rodgers-led Green Bay offense long enough and hard enough for Tom Brady to score enough points with the Bucs offense to win that game. So really, both these two teams, like I said, hitting the pinnacle and the peak of their performances throughout the season right now. I mean, Tampa Bay culminating from their Week 13 bye has been going up and up and up. Really, ever since that Week 13 bye, coming off of the Week 12 loss from Kansas City, they've been excellent. They've been the best team in the NFL, basically scoring the most points in that span since Week 14. Their defense in this postseason has been elite. You said that the Rams were the best defense in the NFL this year, and I don't know that the Rams ever hit a run this season that it has matched what Tampa Bay's defense has done over the last couple of weeks. And I just think that Tampa Bay is really rolling hot into this game, and it's the spread at -3 feels like it could be even closer. Like if you, I wouldn't hate it if it was -2 or even a pick 'em. Really, it feels like this game should be really really close, and it's gonna be incredible to see the narratives that come out of between Mahomes versus Brady, and that's what it keeps coming back to for me. With these two quarterbacks just being possibly at the end of when it's all said and done, being considered number one and number two in the pantheon of NFL quarterbacks. And we get to see them both play in the same championship Super Bowl game. And that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy to me too, though, is that you say this game could be closer in terms of the line, but at the same time, the Kansas City Chiefs are historically great if you consider the run that they've been on. They're 14-2 this year. In one of those games, they didn't play their starters, so
Well,
they were 14-1 in the regular season. They won their playoff games this year, and obviously they won the
you can go
Super
back to
Bowl
last year
last
if you want to
year.
talk about.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
essentially, they've won like 21 out of their past 22 games.
Yeah.
And when you consider a team with that much strength in the game against the Raiders was kind of fluky. So this team could essentially have a perfect record dating back to last year, and they're only a 3-point favorite in the Super Bowl with the most historically talented quarterback we've ever seen in the first 3 years of his career.
Totally.
So yeah, the Chiefs also, it's kind of shocking that at the same time where you feel like this is a pick 'em, it feels like the Chiefs should be favored by more.
Yeah. There's a lot of potential outcomes for this game, a lot of unpredictability.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about it. So if Mahomes wins this game, if the Chiefs win this game, Mahomes has an opportunity to set himself to, like I said, eventually become the greatest quarterback of all time by the end of his career. And I was looking at some of the early career stats for Tom Brady. Remember he came in 2001, I believe, when Drew Bledsoe went out with the injury. He took over in week 2 and he led the Patriots to an all-time run, beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. They were 14 and a half point underdogs, I believe, against the Rams in that Super Bowl. And Tom Brady, never looked back after that. After that run, never lost a starting job. You know, the career speaks for itself. But Mahomes, his first full season. So like you mentioned in our notes, Mahomes sat out his first year. Brady did the same thing. He played one game his first year in the NFL, and so did Mahomes. And Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith his first season, and then so I'm going to consider his second year his first full season. That was his age 23 year. Brady's first full season, age 24. So Mahomes started a year earlier, so he has an opportunity to make a longer run. If you want to think of it that way, and Mahomes has an opportunity to now win 2 Super Bowls within his first 3 seasons. I'm almost certain that's never been done. I didn't look back to see if any quarterback had ever done that, but I'm like 99% sure that's never been done. Brady won 2 Super Bowls in his first 3 years, um, but they weren't back to back. So he won in 01 and 03. I don't know that any young quarterback has ever won back to back. I'm pretty sure that if Mahomes wins this Super Bowl, they will be the only two to win two Super Bowls in their first 3 seasons in the NFL. Mahomes has an opportunity. Sorry, Mahomes made the Pro Bowl in each of his first 3 years. Brady only made it once. He made it in 2003, I believe. 2001? 2001. And Brady so Mahomes is going for his back-to-back Super Bowl. Brady, he did win 3 Super Bowls in his first 4 seasons. Like I said, the Patriots won back-to-back in 03 and 04. Which was the last instance, like I said, since the team repeated, the Chiefs have a chance to do so this year. In Mahomes' first year starting, only one quarterback hasn't made. In Mahomes' first year, that's the only year he didn't make the Super Bowl, but he did win the MVP, and he threw for 50 touchdowns. Tom Brady's career high in touchdown passes thrown in a season, it's 50. Yes, it's his best year ever in his career, statistically. 2007 with Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth, that elite team that the Patriots had that went 18-0, and then they lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants. Brady threw for 50 touchdowns in the regular season. Mahomes tied that in his first full year in the NFL, won MVP, like I said. Really just interesting stats to compare these two because they're really in a class of their own together. And Mahomes is stacking excellence on top of excellence in his first 3 years, and that's what Brady did throughout his entire career. For Christ's sake, it's his 10th Super Bowl, but it's still super early for Mahomes. He's laying the foundation for excellence and setting expectations that, make this conversation worth having, especially if he wins this game. So could Mahomes one day usurp Brady as the greatest quarterback of all time? Let me throw that question to you.
Well, absolutely, but it goes a long way for Brady if he just wins this one game and then ends his career, so he could go out on top, 7 Super Bowls, and he would have beaten Mahomes in this last. Brady's already talking about next year, so that probably won't be the case. I don't
He's
see
talking
his
about
career
playing past
ending.
45 now.
Yeah, he's insane. He could play forever. I don't know when him or LeBron are going to end their careers, but yeah, Mahomes, the start to his career, has been better than any quarterback in history. So if you're talking about the potential ceiling for his career accomplishments, I think it's higher than Brady's. It has to be just based on the start.
I'd agree. This game could be the feather in the cap that puts either of these guys over the other in the end. If Mahomes has a illustrious 20-year career, wins, 5 Super Bowls, maybe not doesn't match Brady's. Maybe say Mahomes wins this game and then goes on to win another 3 throughout his career and plays maybe 18 to 20 years. He's got 5 Super Bowls under the belt. Brady has 6. Say Brady never wins another one. That's a very interesting debate. Mahomes is possibly the most talented because if you talk about a peak performance, because in baseball, you talk like when people do the Hall of Fame debates for baseball, you talk about peak performance, like their peak years, like how good was a player in their best years of their career. Mahomes in his first 3 years has had a run, or I mean, you could talk about his first year, his MVP year that I was mentioning. Like, I don't know, a quarterback has ever reached these heights that he's reaching, at least statistically. And if he plays 18 years, 20 years, Mahomes in the end, especially if he wins this game, that might be the thing that puts him over the top as, most people think to be the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. But it this is the kind of ramifications that this game is having. I mean, we're talking about a guy, and he's in his third year, and we're already talking about him, one day possibly taking over the crown for the number one quarterback, the guy that Tom Brady has earned, the spot that Tom Brady has earned throughout his career.
Yeah, I mean, and again, he's going to benefit from the trajectory of his career and the timing of when it's taking place, because we're in a completely different era. Once again, Tom Brady played in a much more run heavy career, much more run heavy era, just like those who came before him did. So, we're talking about guys. Terry Bradshaw has a ton of Super Bowls, but his stats don't even come close to comparing what Tom Brady did. And then if you look at what Mahomes did in his first couple of years compared to Brady's respectively, it doesn't even come close in terms of what Mahomes has done. And it's just a factor of each era seems to be more inventive. Science is coming farther. These players are getting faster and stronger, and
Yeah.
naturally they're scoring more points. The coaches are becoming extremely innovative. And
And
you
the way
think
that
about
the
the
game
Kansas
is
City
schemed
Chiefs, talk
and
about two of
ruled.
the best offensive coaches in one team with Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid. I mean, I couldn't think of a better duo to want to land, and then to have Travis Kelce and
The
Tyreek
ideal
Hill.
situation,
What
yeah.
what could be more optimal for a strong, big armed quarterback? It's just fantastic. And if you consider that that core is still pretty young, you look at Travis Kelce, he's, I think, 33, but he seems like a very young 33 considering he just had his best year ever.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill only seems to be becoming more of a complete wide receiver, whereas he came into the league mostly as a punt returner and niche player. So these guys are literally growing and developing with Mahomes too. I just don't know if Brady ever even had the weapons to compare. And so I almost feel bad for him in terms of, yes, he's the greatest quarterback of all time, but he wasn't in the greatest situation of all time. And because of that, he might not remain the greatest quarterback of all time.
I don't know that being dealt with Brady being paired with Belichick throughout his entire career in New England. It's very similar to the kind of situation that Mahomes has. I mean, these two
Mhm.
guys, it's just they're in a league of their own. They're literally in. You talk about the pantheon of quarterbacks, and Tom Brady is number one, and Mahomes is starting to burst his way into that scene.
Talent
There's
wise, him and Rodgers are right there. Absolutely.
Yeah. You talked about Travis Kelce. That's another narrative that I had to discuss for this game, because on a lower note, beneath this quarterback battle between Mahomes and Brady, you got a tight end battle, possibly the greatest tight ends of all time, and Kelce and
Yeah.
Gronkowski.
It's
This
great
the
secondary storyline right there.
Right. I mean, the historic battles between these two teams is incredible in this game. I mean, Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski may go down as two of the best. I mean, I think Gronk's the best tight end of all time, especially when you consider how elite he is in the blocking game, and how capable, and just how excellent he always was with the Patriots at blocking. Not, I mean, given he's an elite pass catcher, someone that we all know him for that ability. But a lot of casuals who watch the NFL, don't acknowledge that Gronk's one of the best tight end blockers as well in his career. And I mean, Kelsey and Gronk will be considered along the names of like Tony Gonzalez, Shannon Sharp, Kellen Winslow, Antonio Gates. Those guys are all going to be up there. But I mean, Gronk has probably separated himself from that bunch. I mean, Tony Gonzalez is right there with him. Tony Gonzalez, in my opinion, is right there in that top tier with Gronk. But Kelsey, if he continues this run, especially if he were able to, be a big part of this Super Bowl win for the Chiefs, he is on a trajectory for leapfrogging into this group of players that I'm talking about here. And it's just I kind of wish Kelsey played Week 17 just to boost those stats. That I was looking
He was
back at this.
leading the league in receiving yards before that
Yeah,
game. With wide receivers too, he was ahead of them. He could have led the league in receiving yards as a tight end.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah. and he could have used another touchdown or two as well because he got 11 touchdowns on the season. He's tied. That's tied for 16th most all time in a season. Gronk had 17 back in 2011. That's still the most all time. But say Kelsey caught 2 touchdowns in the
Give him
that
100
week 17.
yards
Give him
just
100
because
yards
that's
and
what he
two
was
touchdowns.
averaging.
I mean, that would make his season possibly, I mean, one of the top 3 seasons all time, maybe possibly top 1 if you want to talk about him leading the league in receiving yards. That's, an incredible accomplishment. But this year that he had, I mean, 1,416 receiving yards. That's the most all time for a tight end in the season. He had 105 receptions. That's the third most all time in a year for a tight end. And then, like I said, 11 touchdowns, tied for 16th. Um, for Gronk, I mean, he hasn't for I mean, talking about this year for Gronk, he hasn't really been heavily involved in the passing game for this postseason. But part of what makes him so great and amazing as a tight end is the ability to not be involved in an outright sense and explicit sense of catching touchdowns and long passes, but he's able to, like I said, block in the trenches, protect Brady, make good blocks downfield for his fellow receivers. Like that's the kind of stuff that Gronk thrives at. He really just does. He's just such a great job at that kind of stuff. But I mean, you look back at their Week 12 matchups between these two teams. Gronk led, I believe, he led the Buccaneers in receiving yards. He had 106 yards, 6 catches in the first matchup between these two teams back in Week 12, and Kelsey had 8 catches for 82 yards. So actually, one of his worst games of the year. I mean, that's still a great game, but actually, that's the kind of season he had. And if one of these two players, if both, it'll be fun to see both these players have great games. But if one of these two players has a head over heels elite game, way better than the other, it's going to be a big feather in their cap, like it was for Mahomes or Brady, in the discussion for greatest tight end of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. And to foreshadow a little bit, I think they both will have a great game, and you'll see that in my DFS lineup. But Gronk seems to have this type of career where he steps up in the Super Bowl. A couple of years ago against the Rams, he was having kind of a so-and-so season, probably one of the worst seasons in the last 5 years of his career, excluding seasons where he was fully injured. And he came up huge in the Super Bowl. Big catches. I remember one right around the goal line. And I think he put up a pretty big yardage
A
total of it.
touchdown.
And
Caught a
I
touchdown.
wouldn't
Or
be
no,
shocked.
yeah, you're right. Right on the goal line, he got stopped like at the 2 yard line or the 1 yard line.
Yeah, and I think it was like a 30-yard pass, like a pretty
Yeah,
important
that was like
catch.
the biggest. That was the biggest play of the game.
Right, and what do big players do in big situations? They step up, and Brady and Gronk are certainly comfortable with each other. If there was a rapport that I would lean on, if I were Tom Brady, my comfortability, it would be going to Gronk and getting myself going. This is a guy where I've been to multiple Super Bowls with him, for Christ's sake. I mean, how can you not think Gronk will step up here? And yeah, and he might not impact the game in the way we've previously seen from a receiving perspective, but he will be heavily involved. That's no doubt. And the part of the reason you have a guy like Gronkowski on the field is to open up other playmakers as well. Last week we saw Cameron Brate with a big game, and I think partially that was because Gronk also creates a lot of attention for a defense when he leaks out of the
Totally.
backfield. And so, it's going to create holes just having him on the field.
Totally. Yeah, Gronk, he's kind of like that. Like I've said this about the Patriots. They were doing this a lot with him, especially in his late years, especially in that Super Bowl run against the Rams. It's kind of like that Lamborghini sports car that you break out of the garage, once every time you need
A
them.
summer car, right? You
Yeah,
only
it's
break
like
it out when it's nice.
you challenge this dude to a race. You're like, dude, you don't know what I got in my garage. You don't know. You want to race down, Hollywood Boulevard?
I was
I
driving
got
the
something for
Toyota
you.
Camry all year in the winter, but it's summer, man, and I got the Ferrari waiting in there. It's been under a sheet.
Yeah. So I hope Gronkowski anytime scored for this game, he was plus 225 on FanDuel. It's good. Some good odds for me. I like that one for me to foreshadow going ahead. But one other narrative that is really big for me in this game is whether or not there's going to be a home field advantage, because this game is going to be played in Tampa Bay at Raymond James Stadium. The capacity for Raymond James, they're going to be filling it 1/3 of the way. They're going to be filling 22,000 fans in attendance for the Super Bowl. I think a third of them or a good amount of them are going to be healthcare workers from Tampa Bay. And the reason why I'm optimistic that there is going to be a little bit of a home field advantage for Tampa Bay is precisely those healthcare workers from the city. I think they're going to be a little rowdy. I think they're going to be a little loud, and there'll be some energy. So, typically in the Super Bowl, it's more of a corporate crowd, guys. A lot of
Whoever can afford the seats,
yeah,
right?
exactly. It's more of like nobody's really rooting heavily towards one side or the other. Just want to see a good
Right.
football game.
Usually
That's the
this is the
majority.
first time that a team playing in the Super Bowl is at home. Otherwise, it's always been neutral. So
This is the
absolutely,
first
it's
time
just a
ever.
mishmash.
Yeah, first team to ever play a Super Bowl in their home stadium. Bruce Arians last week was saying that, or on media day on Monday was saying that he thinks the big advantage is that they got to stay in their own beds, they got to sleep there, just stay in
Yeah.
their normal routine. They were able to sleep in their own beds. He thinks that's a huge advantage on leading up to the game. He doesn't feel that he didn't express a lot of optimism that it would feel like a home game or a big home field advantage during the game. That was
Hmm.
his sense. But for me, I'm optimistic that I honestly think that it's going to boost in terms of like a spread. If I were to set a spread for Tampa Bay, I honestly think it gets me like almost a point. It's almost like if you I think throughout the regular season we were giving home field advantage almost nothing, maybe half a point at best during these spreads. For me, this one feels like it might be like a point. It might the home field advantage might swing the game that way. Um,
Yeah, what I like from that perspective is definitely like I think it helps the over because I think that we saw in the NBA in the bubble when these players were playing where they were living that there was a huge increase in performance and they were kind of ready to go right out of the gate. There
interesting.
was no jet lag. There was no, I got in at 5 a.m. and now
Good point.
I have to catch up on my sleep and my routine is totally thrown off. These Bucks players should be in sync. And I was a little bit worried about the Bucks getting right coming out of the gate because this year they've been very variable in terms of their performances. Occasionally they just look completely off, but essentially it's a home game. They've had a couple of weeks to prepare and they've got to sleep in their own beds. I think that's a huge advantage. So in the first quarter, I think that the Bucks actually have a pretty decent advantage, and I kind of think that also goes into the Kansas City game lines that we've seen over the past couple of years, where they're slow out of the gates, big second and third quarters. We've even seen that in this playoffs. They were down to the Bills 9-0, and they then all of a sudden by the end of the half they were up 21-9. So look for Tampa Bay to get off to a hot start and probably win the first quarter.
Yeah. I like that. That's not a bad handicap. The Chiefs, they got to fly. They're going to fly into Tampa Bay on 2 days before the game, so Friday. And typically the teams fly in, I believe, on the Sunday, so the week before
Yeah, usually there's
the
a full
Super Bowl.
media week and
Yeah, so
everything.
they on Monday is the media day. Then there's a whole, there's all these different events, guys getting pulled everywhere, a lot of chaos. So actually a little bit of advantage for Kansas City in a sense because they get to just focus on practice for the 2 weeks and
Mhm.
not have to worry too much about the chaos of the event. But hopefully it just results in a better played game, more exciting, a lot of good football. That's what my
Less
thought is. Hopefully,
distractions for sure.
yeah. I was trying to look back on this trend, the home field advantage, and there were two other Super Bowls that were played in the local region of the teams in the game. So in 1979, the Los Angeles Rams made to Super Bowl 14, and they lost to the Steelers 31-19. They were in the Pasadena Rose Bowl, so not far from their home stadium. I believe they were playing in the Coliseum where USC plays now, and I mean that was a blowout game, I guess, but not much of an advantage there. And then in the other instance, I was looking at San Francisco 49ers made it to Super Bowl 19. They won that game 27-17 against the Dolphins in Stanford Stadium. They were about 23 miles away from their home field in Candlestick Park. And so kind of a wash there, not much to take away from me between those two, but I thought it was interesting that there were two instances previously where a team got to play with a little bit of a home field advantage. But we'll see if, like I said, the healthcare workers, the pandemic situation, if anything, those kind of X factors play into this, this developing story of a home field advantage. Maybe, like I said, the healthcare workers can kind of bring more energy for the Bucks, but we'll see how that works out. Um, the league typically handle the ticket sales for this game, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the Bucks fans are going to pack the stadiums. Like the Bucks can't just like only sell to Bucks fans.
Hmm.
That's what some teams do in hockey sometimes in the NHL. You can't do that here. So it's going to be kind of diverse crowd, we could say. And I was looking at ticket prices. Tickets are gonna be tough to come by. 22,000 fans. The cheapest seat on Ticketmaster was $5,886. Most expensive seat was $40K. So if you wanna, risk going to the Super
You wanna
Bowl,
book a couple on the corporate card, Ben?
yeah, right. We got that kind of cash at ATA. So you fronting
Maybe
it? Not
next
me.
year.
All right.
A little too late. We didn't pass the test yet. You got to get the vaccine first.
Yeah. So interesting for me, the developing storyline with that. I wonder if, late in the game, if the fans get louder for the Bucks, if that plays into any sort of late drive, or, maybe when the Kansas City Chiefs are on offense, if it gets too loud for them to, call audibles, or, stuff like that. Those, maybe that starts to play into the game, especially late.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a storyline, the home field advantage. And then the question is also, how does the impact of playing in the Super Bowl last year affect the Chiefs? They just did it. They should have that relevant experience, and they should be able to bring that to the game. Looking at past Super Bowl winners in their second appearance, I think it's happened 14 times where a team has played in back-to-back Super Bowls, and I believe they've won 9 of the 14 times. So
Hmm.
a decently significant result. It might be 8, but at least more than half of the time, the reigning team who was in their Super Bowl previously wins the second time. But
Those are old.
it's not,
Yeah. The
but it's
last
not
time
like
was,
Tom Brady and the Bucks don't have Super Bowl experience on their team, considering
yeah,
Tom has been there 10 times. So I think that's less impactful than probably what could be the home field.
quite possibly.
So where in some years we would say, this team doesn't have a lot of experience, and the fact that the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl last year is very impactful and very important. I don't think it necessarily matters when the most important player on the team is the quarterback, and Tom Brady's been there 10 times.
Yeah, definitely. Another historic narrative for me here. Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, happened to also be the defensive coordinator. I'm gonna cry. He was the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants in 2007 and 2008, when the New York Giants held the then 18-0 New England Patriots with Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth, all those weapons. They held that offense, a historic offense, to just 14 points in that Super Bowl. Really, just Spagnuolo had Brady's number in that game. Brady, his longest pass in Super Bowl 42, 19 yards. He couldn't even get a pass over 20 yards. This year, the Bucks, though, they lead the league in plays over 25 yards or more. They have 44 plays over 25 yards. The 2007 Pats offense did average 6.2 yards per play. This Bucks team averages 6 yards per play, so not quite on that level. The Chiefs defense they rank fourth worst in the explosive plays allowed this year. And only the teams that are only worst are Detroit, Atlanta, and Minnesota. So that's going to be a big X factor for me, whether or not Spagnuolo is able to scheme up enough, defensive charisma or defensive moxie to hold Brady and the Bucks and keep them in front of them, limit the big plays, because that's what's going to win the Bucks the game. If they're able to stretch the field, get a big play or two in this game, that's going to be the difference maker for them, most likely. I went back to watch that Super Bowl 42. I put myself through the pain of that whole experience again. I don't think I had watched it since, the night that happened, and how I remember just being so miserable, possibly one of the worst, maybe 3 or 4 losses of my sports, fandom. And the Giants' scheme in that game was to show Brady as many different kinds of looks as possible. No play was the same. Like, the defense kept changing every play, and the linemen and linebackers would multiple times fake like they were going back into coverage to throw off the running back for the Patriots, so that the running back would block somebody else, and then they would and then the running back would commit elsewhere, and then they would rush the quarterback. Like Imamura and Justin Tuck would do that a few times, and Brady got sacked at least a couple times that way. And the defensive line for the Giants was just incredible in that game. Justin Tuck, Osi Umenyiora, Michael Strahan, just elite combination of players, and I don't think the Chiefs have that in this game. But it was interesting to see how Spagnuolo was able to scheme that game against such an elite offense, because this Tampa Bay Bucks team is not that New England team, but it's still Tom Brady. And we'll see if Brady, maybe Brady went back to that game to see what Spagnuolo might want to do for him against him this game, because Brady was hit 9 times in that game. That you can't have that. You can't have that in this one. Brady can't be hit 9 times in this game for the Buccaneers, and
Right.
that's not going to be good for them, because Brady's only averaged 3.5 QB hits a game in 2020. So he's just over a third of that total that he was hit back in that Super Bowl. So the Chiefs they're actually fifth in QB knockdown percentage this year. They got a 12% knockdown percentage, 67 total QB knockdowns this year. So the Chiefs defensive line does get at it. And I think that's going to be a big X factor for me, whether or not, this offensive line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I think is very, very good, can keep up and keep that the Chiefs defense at bay and keep them, behind, driving back and keep Brady protected.
Yeah, and I think one of the stats that highly correlates with a pass rush that's getting after the quarterback is interceptions, because it creates a lot of pressure, and then oftentimes quarterbacks make mistakes. Now the Chiefs this year, they might not have been the best team by every single metric defensively, but they did create a lot of turnovers in the passing game specifically, and that's their strength. And if I had to bet on one side of this game who's going to have more turnovers, I would probably guess Tom Brady's going to have more turnovers than Patrick Mahomes against this Tampa Bay pass defense, which is certainly which certainly is more open to exploitation. So
QB
I
hurries are
think
important.
that, yeah, between Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu, they could create some problems for Tom Brady when he's reading these schemes and what Spagnuolo can create, because he does also have experience going against this quarterback and knowing what his mindset is in big games. The question is, can the Chiefs create that pass rush? I'm not sure that their pass rush is going to be nearly as effective as the Bucs has been this playoffs. When you consider JPP and Devin White and Shaq Barrett and all those things that those guys have done. So it'll be interesting to see, both sides of the ball are extremely, extremely well matched.
Yeah, really just like I said, battle of two elite teams. Brady, he's an underdog for the first time in this Super Bowl since 2002. That was his first Super Bowl appearance, almost 20 years ago against St. Louis. They were 14-point underdogs. That was the second biggest upset in Super Bowl history. But the Patriots were a pick 'em against the Seahawks in 2015 when they won that game on the Malcolm Butler pick. But the story with Brady here, man, I don't know. For me, it's like the only way I would be hesitant to pick Brady as an underdog in a Super Bowl is if he was facing Patrick Mahomes. So for really this, I mean, if they were facing the Bills, I'd be heavy on the Bucs here. And I think that this is just going to be a great game. And we saw these two teams play against each other earlier in the year, and we've touched on it previously. Let's go back and look a little bit of what we could take away from that Week 12 matchup. Did you look at? Do you remember how that game turned out? Do you remember it was a Tyreek Hill game where he caught 13 catches, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns? Do you remember that? Do you remember that one?
Well, yeah, I think that's a big part in going into my analysis. As I previously mentioned, I think that the Bucs secondary is much more easily exploitable, especially considering the game that we saw Tyreek Hill have against them previously. So you had mentioned that Travis Kelce had more of a pedestrian outing, and that's because I think this team has some pretty strong linebackers who are very, very quick and able to cover pretty well, but their secondary has had a lot of holes and they've been very exploitable in the long pass game. Tyreek Hill, I feel like, could just be the type of guy who's a little bit of a Rubik's Cube and can shift and change in so many different patterns and colors, and could be all over the field and use so many different effective ways, those little tap passes and just screen passes, but also in a hurry, he's down the field in 70 yards in the end zone.
Yeah, for Hill, I mean, you have to double Hill and Kelce as often as you can. You have to do chunk coverages where you have like 3 or 4 defensive players covering two receivers or so. And for Hill and Kelce, it's all about a team effort to try to limit these guys and their explosiveness. Because I mean, especially I think Hill's best route is when he runs across the middle or when he runs across the field, because it gives him as much room, it gives him more room and space to create, separation from him and his defenders. And so
Mm-hmm.
when Hill's going to outrun every single player on the field when he's out there. And so that's what I'm talking about with chunk coverage. You have to get guys You have to help him. You have to, when you're a safety, you have to know you can't let Hill get behind you. You can't let Kelsey get behind you. These guys are gonna, try to get chunky yardage out of it. You can't let them get the big play. You have to keep them in front of you. And that's gonna be a big thing for them because they were not able to do that in that first matchup. Um, for me, I've seen a lot of people, and I saw John Gruden talk about this. He was on ESPN the other day. He was saying that if he was coaching the Bucks, he would try to win the time of possession battle in this one. He would keep Mahomes off the field. He would run the ball. He would, with Fournette and Jones, who have both Fournette's looked really good, and Jones had a good season. And the thing is, they tried this in the first game. They ran the ball 5 out of 10 first downs, but they ran the ball 4 out of 6 times on first down. The Bucks did it in their first 6 drives. The Bucks ran the ball 4 times on first down. They were trying to set a pace in that first game to, control the ball, shorten the game, keep the Chiefs offense off the field. But that doesn't always work with the Chiefs because the Chiefs, they don't need the ball to score points. They don't need the ball long to score points. They had a 75-yard touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill in that first game. I mean, the Chiefs ranked 16th this year in average time possession per game. They averaged holding the ball just over 30 minutes a game, 30 minutes, 14 seconds. And over the last 3 games where they've dominated offensively very well, they've had the ball just 28 minutes, 59 seconds. So just about 29 minutes. So they don't need to win the time of possession battle to win football games. So that's not what my worry would be here with the Bucks. Obviously it's good in theory to think, yeah, you want to keep Mahomes off the field as long as possible. You don't want to tire your defense out. But when you keep the Chiefs on offense on the field by, keeping their yardage total, their chunk yardage, getting 5 to 8 to 6 yards at a time, keeping the plays in front of them. Like that's actually more important to me than keeping the offense off the field. When they're on the field, you have to keep the big plays down. You have to limit those big plays. And because the Chiefs got a lot of them in that game against the Bucks in that first matchup.
Well, yeah, the Chiefs have 4 sub 440 guys in Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, and Demarcus Robinson. People forget that, Sammy Watkins is a sub 440 guy too, and he might actually play in this game, yet to be seen. But last year he had a big impact, over 100 yards in the Super Bowl. So, we're talking about Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and we're neglecting to mention these other fantastic assets. Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out of the backfield a couple more weeks where he's able to rest his injured legs and catch some more passes. And then Mecole Hardman, any single play could take 170 yards as well. So this team doesn't need time of possession. You're absolutely right, because they can be supremely effective through the air and score quickly and score in bunches.
Certainly. For me, some of the other takeaways I got from that Week 12 game, the Bucks. I mean, there was a lot of things that didn't work for the Bucks on defense. They were doing a lot of zone against the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to, keep, like I said, keep guys in front of them, but it wasn't working because you can't let receivers like Kelsey and Hill, because they're so good at it, at just finding the soft spots in those zones, running across the middle, working their way, and they run Kelsey left, and then they have Hill running to the right, and they create space that way. And both players are so magnetic that's how they scheme. They use Kelsey as a decoy sometimes in the flat, so that the linebackers, draw to Kelsey in the flat, and then Tyreek comes across the middle for an 18-yard gain. Like that kind of stuff happened. That's like the bread and butter for the Chiefs. And so for me, it's going to be a lot of combo coverages. You have to do a lot of man and zone coverage. The zone, you have to keep a guy deep. You have to keep 2 guys deep against the Chiefs. You got it. You can't let them get deep on you. And so that's going to be important. You have to keep those guys in front of you, but you also just can't let Mahomes operate, and you have to disguise your coverages. I mean, they were obvious in the way that they were playing their defense against Mahomes. It was just soft coverages, letting Mahomes have time in the pocket. That's not going to work. That's not going to work again. They'll score 35 points against you if you do that again. And the Bucks will need to get more creative defensively, try their best to confuse Mahomes at the line of scrimmage as best as possible in this Super Bowl. But I mean, that game was pretty much over in the first quarter. It was 17-0 after the first. But for me, I was trying to get some sort of conclusion, some takeaways from that game. I did see some stuff in the fourth quarter out of Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay did score 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. The Chiefs were playing on defense. They were playing early in the game. The Chiefs were playing up like press coverages. They were, a lot of blitzes, a lot of, stifling the run game because they knew that the Bucks wanted to run the ball and set the tone with a
Hmm.
pace of play that was to their standards.
Great
But
pressure at the line is the way
exactly,
to beat the Bucks and the way to beat Brady, and that's
exactly.
always been the recipe. So not shocking that's the way they started last time around.
So when they got up ahead, obviously they knew the Bucks were going to try to throw. They started to back off. They got softer coverages.
Hmm.
That's not going to work. You can't do that
No,
with the
you
Bucks.
can't give the GOAT
You have to
time
stay
to read the
aggressive.
defense.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Especially in that fourth quarter, I watched all the plays, and I don't know that I saw many rushes over 4 man rushes. I saw, I mean, a handful of 5 man rushes. You can't give Brady time to operate in the pocket because you have to make him uncomfortable. Because, like you said, when Brady's under pressure, when he's hurried, that's when he makes the mistakes. That's when he just throws one up to Mike Evans, hoping that he catches it, and that's when you create turnovers. That's when you create chaos for the Chiefs on defense. If you give Brady time to throw, he will pick you apart like he did to the Chiefs in that fourth quarter. He was going through all of his progressions, finding open men. He was able to effectively utilize his running backs out of the backfield in the passing game, which I thought was an interesting aspect of that one. Maybe they look to do that a little bit more in this one. Makes me
Mhm.
think that maybe Fournette or Jones or both get more involved in the passing game in this game. Um, but when the Bucks were sniffing their second touchdown of the quarter, the Chiefs started, like I said, bringing in extra rusher. They have 5 man rushes back then, but then Brady started to rely on the short throws to his elite receiving cores, who like Godwin, and Godwin had a few catches that, Godwin's an elite pass catcher and elite route runner. He
Yeah.
creates space. He creates some of the most space 5 yards off the line of scrimmage than anybody in the league, and he's the kind of guy that is able to juke you with a misdirection step, a pivot one way, a shift one way. Like he is great at that. That is his
Yep.
specialty. And if that's going to be the push and pull that they're going to have, because if you start rushing guys, that means that it's going to be all on the cornerbacks and the linebackers to get fresh coverage, create chaos, and make it difficult for receivers to create space, 5 to 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. That's when Brady's going to start to look at the short pass throws, the slants, the out routes, the flats, the screens. Like those are the kind of things that the Bucks will look to when Kansas
Mhm.
City starts to blitz. And so that's what Kansas City definitely has in the back of their minds. If they start to blitz, the secondary is going to start to look that way to stay tight on their man. But that
Right.
second touchdown went to Evans, 7 yard touchdown to Evans, by the way.
It'll be a lot of Godwin in the tight ends if the Chiefs end up bringing the blitz, and so it'll all be about the communication and whether Brady is on the same page with these guys, and it'll take a lot of crisp route running, and they have to catch the ball. Godwin has had some issues in the playoffs this year with catching the ball, and that'll be crucial when we're talking about small plays, 4 or 5 yards down the field, to be able to convert on third down. So do they actually pick up those 5 or 6 yard passing plays? It'll be important, and
That's what Brady's specialty is.
I think
That's
that
his
Godwin's going to
specialty.
be able to do it. I have confidence that those some of those drops were more of a fluke. He was coming back from
Mhm.
having pins in his finger earlier in the season, and he seems to have looked more comfortable last game.
Yeah. And for a lot of teams, this kind of game against the Chiefs would have been, they got down 17-0. And you think a lot of teams would just kind of fold. They're playing what most believe to be the best team in the NFL at that time, especially. And, kudos to the Bucks. They made it a close game. It's crazy. They got up to 24 points, 24-7. They lost that game by just 3 points. And they've only, the Chiefs haven't, the Buccaneers haven't lost a game by more than 3 this season to any team besides the New Orleans Saints. So the Bucks, they came back in week 14. Like I said, they got the bye in week 13. They regrouped. They took a hard look at what they were doing on offense because it wasn't working. They were struggling going into that game against Kansas City. They figured some things out late in the game, and it seems like they utilized it a lot more since week 14 on. And the Bucks, like I said, have been the hottest team in the NFL since that week 14 coming off the bye. The offense has scored, I think, 34, almost 34 and a half points per game.
Yeah,
So,
they're undefeated since that one, right?
yep. And I just think that, like I said, these two teams are playing their best brand of football right now. It'll be fun to see how they match up. I think it's gonna be a different game script I don't think that we're gonna see another 27-24 game where the Chiefs go up 17 in the first quarter. I don't think that's gonna be the case in this game.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that we're in for a much different start.
Definitely. All right, let's look at some X factors for this Super Bowl matchup on Sunday. The first questions for me in this game, the biggest variables has got to be the injuries because there's a decent amount of injuries that are possibly affecting the outcome of this game. Um, like will injuries or a lack of key players or key players being hindered or not performing at their peak levels how is it going to affect the game? How is it going to affect how this Super Bowl plays out? Because Kansas City, we haven't touched about it yet. They don't have Eric Fisher, their left tackle, their best lineman of the season, towards
Pro Bowl
Achilles
left
late.
tackle.
Yeah, he tore his Achilles late in the game last week. I mean, 2 weeks ago against Buffalo. They've been without Mitchell Schwartz. He had I think a broken back. He's been out since week 6. And you look at Kansas City last year. Eric Fisher missed 8 games. They went 4-4 in that span. So it's not good, not ideal. I mean, he's a big part of what keeps Mahomes safe and he keeps him comfortable. Eric Fisher is one of the elite linemen in this game, and so without him, that's going to be a big loss for them. Because Tampa Bay, like we said, has an elite defensive line. They're very, very good, and they're going to look to exploit this possibly critical loss for Kansas City. The Chiefs have shifted their linemen around, which is also kind of something to be wary about because obviously in an ideal world, you have a great left tackle to back up your Pro Bowl guy, but that's not the case. That's never going to be the case. And so they move Remmers. He's the replacement for Schwartz. He's moving from right tackle to left tackle. Wiley is moving from right guard to right tackle. Stefan Wisniewski he's going to start at right guard. So you got guys moving all over the place for the Chiefs on the offensive line. We'll see if there's any confusion there. The 2-week preparation plan is going to be helpful for them, especially on the offensive line, in my opinion. But the Buccaneers are definitely going to be trying to exploit, the shortcomings of the potential shortcomings of this Chief, front five.
Right, you have an issue again where the offensive line is compromised, and then Patrick Mahomes and his leg is also compromised. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're dialing up more pressure this game than some people may expect.
Yeah. For the Chiefs as well, they have some questionable players in Le'Veon Bell with a knee problem. Cornerback Rashad Fenton, he has a foot. L'Jarius Sneed, he's in concussion protocol. Sammy Watkins with the calf. I believe these guys are going to play, but just worthy of a note because they might be banged up, maybe not playing at their best. And then, like you said, the question is whether or not Mahomes is 100% running the ball because he had 5 carries for 5 yards last week. It didn't matter. The guy operated like a wizard in the pocket, but his feet are his last. That's his emergency brake. Like that's his, when nothing's working and there's nobody open, that's what he goes to. He is able to create. He is able to keep defenses honest by keeping the threat of a 20-yard quarterback run in his back pocket. Like when he's healthy, that's what he's capable of. But if the toe and if he's not feeling 100% still with the concussion or whatever that was that he had 3 weeks ago, we'll see if that is still affecting him. I don't know. Clyde Edwards-Helaire also, is he 100%? He had 6 carries for 7 yards against the Bills, so clearly wasn't someone that they tried to rely on for offensive efficiency in that game. We'll see if he's more heavily involved in this matchup. For the Bucs, you got Antonio Brown banged up. He has a knee problem. He practiced today. It looked like he was doubtful earlier in the week to play. I think the guy's a gamer. He wants to play. This is, I think, his first Super Bowl of his career, and the guy is a Hall of Fame talent, and he deserves to. I mean, you could say all you want about all of his off-field issues, but when a guy is this good, he deserves to play in a Super Bowl throughout in his career, and hopefully he's able to give it a go and be effective on Sunday. The Bucs have a number of cluster injuries on defense. It seems like all of them are trending towards playing, but you got a lot of guys banged up, and it seems like, on defense especially, you get a lot of guys that play through injuries. I mean, I'm thinking about how the guy for the Seahawks, Cam Chancellor, was talking about last week about how the Seahawks, when they were playing against the Pats, when they were, because it was the Malcolm Butler anniversary of the interception, and he was talking about it haunts him that play, the decision to do that. But he was saying like how banged up the Seahawks were, how like he was playing with like a broken foot or something, and I think somebody had a torn labrum. I think there was all these different injuries that the Seahawks had on defense, but all of them were playing through it. All of them trying to reach their goal of a Super Bowl. And
last game of the year, right?
Didn't work out for them. And so that has to be something similar here. I mean, you got Jordan Whitehead for the Bucs, shoulder and knee problems. Levante David, a hamstring issue. Antoine Whitfield, an ankle problem. They're all trying towards playing, like I said. But I mean, David Winfield and Whitehead rank second, third, and fourth in tackles for the Bucs this season. Every member of that trio has at least a sack and a forced fumble on the year in each game, or in throughout the year. And it could be a big blow for Tampa Bay's defense if these guys aren't 100%.
Yeah, that could be certainly be a big impact, especially when we're talking about tackles. We're talking about the yards after the catch. We're talking about those short yardage plays that Chris Godwin impact, those tight ends. Are these guys too injured to be able to make those quick tackles and get those guys on the ground, or does Gronk able to turn a 5-yard catch into a 30-yard catch like he did last week or 2 weeks ago at this point? But
Well,
yeah,
these
it's
injuries
going to be important.
these injuries but the Bucs. The Bucs have some injuries on defense.
Oh
David
yeah,
Mayfield and Whitehead. They're. I mean, it's I don't know that. I mean, they're obviously going to be playing, but we'll see if they're able to keep up and with the Tyreek Hills and the Travis Kelce's, because this could be a physical ball game for those guys.
Yeah, I think for both teams, a big theme is going to be limiting yards after the catch, because I think that creating pressure against either of these quarterbacks, considering the offensive line situation and the game plan, and that the fact that these quarterbacks like to take deep shots, is going to incentivize the pass rush. And when that happens, that means the ball is going to be out quick. And do the linebackers converge on the ball? Do the guys from the secondary, are they able to make those plays and limit the 10-yard catch from becoming the 30, 40, 50-yard catch, which can easily happen when you're talking about Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Tyreek Hill, all of these players, Mecole Hardman. So
Yeah.
these injuries could be certainly impactful when you're talking about guys who are the second, third, and fourth leading tacklers on a team.
Definitely. Well, you touched on the Chiefs defense as well and how they're going to be able to try to stifle the Bucs defense. I mean, Bucs offense. So the Bucs have their problems with injuries on their defense, but I mean the Chiefs have a lot of their own worries on that side of the football for themselves. I mean the Chiefs are the worst ranked defense the Bucs have faced since Week 16 against Detroit. Detroit's the Chiefs are 24th in weighted DVOA. I think Detroit's like 31st or something. But the Chiefs have they're 24th in weighted DVOA. I think they're 18th in points given up this year. The Bucs have the best ranked defense the Chiefs have faced since the Chiefs faced New Orleans in Week 15. New Orleans has a second ranked defense in weighted DVOA. That is the only defense that Kansas City has faced this year that is ranked better than the Bucs. So the Bucs are the second best defense that the Chiefs have faced this season. The Bucs so the Bucs offense against teams with defense is ranked in the bottom half of the league this year. So the Chiefs are 24th, like I said. So against these teams in the bottom half of the league, the Bucs offense is averaging 34.44 points per game, and they're allowing 19.11 points to those opponents. The Chiefs have averaged 30.12 points per game and allowed 21.47. So, I mean, if you take away, I'm taking out the Week 17 numbers because I mean that was a toss-up game for the Chiefs, but the Chiefs, I mean the Bucs against these bottom half teams are also averaging 425 yards per game of offense. The Chiefs have averaged the Chiefs have given up 427.2 yards per game. Again, taking out Week 17. The Bucs have averaged offensive EPA of 17.78 against these bottom half defenses. The Chiefs have averaged 16.35 offensive EPA this year. Again, taking away Week 17, and the Bucs are 8-1 straight up against these bottom half teams, bottom half defenses. The one loss coming against obviously the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 12. So the Chiefs they have the work cut out for them. Their defense is going to be they're going to be a big factor in this one. They're going to big X factor, whether or not they're able to keep the Buccaneers from having the big plays that they're known for this year, and whether or not they're able to create any turnovers, create pressure on Brady. That's going to be a big X factor for the Chiefs, and whether or not they're able to pull this one out. The Chiefs against defenses ranked 15 or higher, so that would include the Bucs, obviously. I took out the Bills last game just because, I mean, the Chiefs absolutely dominated last game. So for the purpose of this argument, I was looking at, besides the last game against the Bills in the conference championship, I was looking at games where the Chiefs were facing quality defenses this year, whether teams that were ranked in the top half in defense this season. Their win-loss record speaks for themselves. They're 6-0 straight up. But they averaged 28.17 points per game. They allowed 21.83, so not quite the standard of excellence that you look for with the Chiefs. And they had an offensive EPA of 14.96 against those better defenses. So Chiefs are always going to be a great team, but there's something to be said about, their standard of excellence is lowered a little bit when they're facing these better teams on defense. And so we'll see if that trend continues in the Super Bowl here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that the defense could be a big factor for the Chiefs. I'm just wondering how much of an impact on the defense was the offense, because we know that when you have one of the
It's
most
always matched up.
explosive offensive teams who was in the top 10 in scoring and led the league in yards during the regular season, that's going to create a lot of opportunity for the other team because they're going to be playing catch up, which puts a lot more pressure on your defense and just typically leads to higher point totals. So where a
Yeah.
team like the Rams benefited from having a poor offense and a really strong defense, at least for their defensive statistics, the Chiefs had the inverse impact where I think they probably are more like an average defense, but look a little bit below average just because of how good their offense is.
That could be true. That's a good point. One thing that the Chiefs defense is going to have to, keep an eye on and try to address and try to exploit on that side of the football is I saw a great breakdown on ESPN this week from Dan Orlovsky. He has the hits and misses sometimes. Orlovsky.
UConn's very own, man. I'll
Yeah.
support him. Go Huskies.
So he was highlighting the pass blocking from the Tampa Bay running backs this year, and he was highlighting what Fournette and Jones were able to do in the pass blocking game, and they've been struggling in the pass block situations that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have had to address. And there was a lot of Fournette missing coverages, blocking the wrong guys, not attacking his blocks aggressively. You can't sit back as a running back when you're blocking a pass rusher like a linebacker or an elite pass rusher. You have to attack them, because if you sit back, they will juke the shit out of you. Some of these guys, these are really athletic dudes, and they will just they'll go right by you if you don't attack them and address the block right in front of you. And there's the Chiefs are gonna bring five to six man blitzes occasionally throughout this game. It'll be a big X factor whether or not Fournette and Jones are able to stop the extra guy, because when Brady is under pressure, when a guy is set loose, unblocked coming at Brady, that's when he makes his worst throws. That's when he just throws his ducks up there hoping that something good happens, or he has to throw it away, or he gets intentional grounding like that. Those are all bad situations that happen when Brady's under those scenarios where the guys are running free at him. Fournette and Jones are going to be a huge X factor in the pass blocking game. Brady has been pressured on 17.8% of his dropbacks this season. That's 28th in the league. So he's been sitting pretty in the pocket this year. The Chiefs blitz more than any other team the Bucs have faced this postseason, though. The Chiefs blitz 35.7% of the time. The Washington Redskins blitz 32.4, New Orleans 31.8. Green Bay was 24.7. So whether or not the Bucs can stifle the Chiefs pass rush is going to be a big X factor. The only other thing that I want to talk about in terms of unpredictability or X factors for this game, the weather. Because the weather is something, this is an outdoor stadium. We're in Tampa Bay, and typically you would think, Super Bowls are in warm weather states or they're in domes. You don't have to worry about this stuff. But the weather, it's going to be a little rainy, a little wet during the day in Tampa Bay right
Classic
now.
Florida.
I was looking at the forecast. There's thunderstorms in the morning. There's a chance of scattered thunderstorms in the afternoon. There's winds 5 to 10 miles per hour, 60% chance of rain during the day. At night, so this game starts at 6:30 p.m. So we're looking more at a night forecast here. It's going to be cloudy with occasional showers, possibly 40% chance of rain, a low of 62, winds about 5 to 10 miles per hour. So, nice weather, you'd hope. But, if the ball gets wet, if, this field gets wet, if the field conditions get slippery, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Maybe if you see something in the first half where the field looks wet or the ball's slippery, maybe you bang the under in the second half.
Yeah, watch out for deflated balls too. I mean, it is Tom Brady after all.
Shut your mouth. All right, buddy. Any thoughts with X factors for the game?
I think it could be the ground game. Like you said, if there is a little bit of weather factor, and we wanted to limit the Chiefs, and Ronald Jones was an effective running back, I think he could be an X factor. The Bucs gave him almost as much work on the ground as Leonard Fournette, but he just wasn't simply as effective. He's coming off an injury, and I think they were kind of slow playing him back into the game and back into a rhythm. He's a guy who could possibly pick up some chunk yardage. You know, a guy who broke a 90-yard touchdown during the regular season, so big playability. You know, if we are talking about eating up some clock and trying to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, Ronald Jones could be an impact player. More likely, I think that if the Bucs win, it's going to be because of a guy like Shaq Barrett or JPP getting kind of like a sack fumble. Otherwise, I think the game line is going to be heavily in the Chiefs' favor. I have thought that way all year, except for the fact that I do have a small bet on the Bucs that I placed in the preseason with 55-1 odds. So I think the Chiefs are gonna win, and I think I need to hedge just because I kind of want to put that bet in a box and say, you know, that was a bet I made at a time evaluating a couple of long shot teams. Now we're doing our analysis specifically on this matchup, and I almost have to look at them as two completely separate entities. Now, obviously, I don't want to create a situation where I give myself negative value. So in that sense, I do want to make sure that they correlate, but I think the Chiefs win this game, but I do have that bet, so I'm completely torn as well.
Totally. Yeah. In
So I think
summation,
the X factor is I'm going to lose all my money. I think that's the X factor.
yeah. I hope not, buddy, for your sake. I mean, it should be a good game at the very least. I mean, hopefully, even if we lose some money, hopefully we at least see a good football game. But in summation, basically, what it comes down to is the matchups that we're going to be seeing in this game. So for me, just to target some of these matchups that we're going to see, I wrote down some of the guys that are going to be facing up against their opposing, guys that are going to be trying to guarding or facing. For me, Devin White and Levante David versus Travis Kelce. Whether or not they're able to, keep him to another 8-catch, 82-yard game, that's what you're gonna. That's the best you're gonna do against him. If you could keep him to something like that again, that's gonna be a great accomplishment. Tyreek Hill versus Antoine Whitfield, Jordan Whitehead, and Sean Murphy Bunting. He burned this group of guys in the first matchup. It can't be the case again. You can't let that happen again. Winfield, Whitehead, and Murphy Bunting are going to have their work cut out for them.
I think it's time to grab the aloe vera because I think those guys are going to get burned again.
We'll see. And then JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Ndamukong Suh versus Eric Fisher's backup, and I believe the other guy is shifting over. Sorry, the name blanked my head for a second. Remmers. So they'll be, Remmers is moving to the left tackle, and I believe Martinez Rankin is going to get some playing time. He's the backup too for Eric Fisher as well. We'll see if Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh are able to, create pressure and the defensive line for the Buccaneers. And then on the other side of the matchups, you got Tristan Wirfs, the elite offensive right tackle for the Buccaneers, the rookie, facing off against Frank Clark, someone who, he replaced Houston for Kansas City's defense. Houston had a rough, that experience with the offsides.
Lining up offsides, yep.
So Frank Clark was his replacement. He's in having a good season. Tristan Wirfs is going to have to, shut him down. I think Clark is like third or fourth in tackles for the Chiefs this year. I think Wirfs should have a good game against him. And then, like I said, the Buccaneers running backs against the pass rushers for Kansas City, all the blitzers, Damian Wilson, Tyrann Mathieu, like Honey Badger. Like these guys are going to be blitzing, trying to create pressure on Brady, force him to make a bad throw. Fournette and Ronald Jones are going to have to step up and protect their guy. And then the Tampa Bay deep throws versus the secondary for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, you got Daniel Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu, strong safety and free safety for the Chiefs. Whether or not they're able to keep the Buccaneers from, continuing their trend of 44 deep balls, plays over 25 yards this season, whether or not that trend continues is going to be up to those two guys. And then obviously you got the vague ones like Steve Spagnuolo versus Brady, like I said, and Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator for the Bucs versus Patrick Mahomes. It'll be interesting to see how the defensive scheme against these quarterbacks to try to confuse them as much as possible. Because you're not going to, confuse these guys too much. They're, czars. They're geniuses, football gurus in their own rights, and you're not going to confuse them too much. But you got to do your best at making it difficult for them.
I like the breakdown.
All right, buddy. Let's talk a little bit about some gambling, and then we'll get into some DFS.
Two of my favorite things. Let's go.
Dude, the Super Bowl is the pinnacle of gambling. It's the biggest gambling event of the year. There's literally hundreds of things you could bet on for this single game. I think that there's more I was hearing there's more things you could bet on for the Super Bowl this year, or just in the last few years, I guess. But this year specifically, you were saying there's more things you could bet on this year than there were like 20 years ago for the entire season. For the entire year, you couldn't bet on more things than what you could bet on now. It's literally you could bet on whether or not the guy wearing like the quarterback's wearing blue shoes or something like that. Like, dude, if you could think it, you could bet it. And
Shout out to the internet.
so many props. It's crazy how many different things you could bet on for this. But here are some props that caught my eye. You could mention what you think, what your thoughts are for some of these. So the team to score last in the game, and this was an interesting one for me because usually the team that scores last you think would win, and that's not always the case. I mean, I think that I was looking back at the Patriots games against in the Super Bowl, the Patriots Super Bowl games. They out of the games they won, there was only one game that it was against the Eagles where they beat the Eagles. Donovan McNabb, Terrell Owens. They beat the Eagles and the Eagles kicked a field goal. That was the last score of the game. But other than that, Tom's teams have scored last in 5 of the 9 Super Bowls he's played in. He'll look to make it 6 out of 10 this game. The Bucks are even, and the Chiefs are minus 130 as the favorites. The Chiefs are going to get the worst odds. For me, I thought it was a little bit of a value on the Bucks there. I mean, the Tom Brady being the guy, the greatest quarterback of all time that he is, Gronkowski being such a veteran. These guys that are for the Buccaneers are elite. They're elite on offense, and they deserve a little bit more respect, in my opinion. I thought the Chiefs at even odds was a decent pick for me in this one. The race to 30. So I think that there's got to be a team that scores 30 in this game, and the Bucks are plus 250 to reach 31st. The Chiefs are plus 120. Neither is plus 180. Kind of like the value on both those two teams, the Bucks and the Chiefs. But I mean, plus 250 for the Bucks seem tantalizing just because if you're on the Bucks, I think it correlates to that because we talk about it. If you're going to beat the Chiefs this year, I've constantly said you got to score 30 points or more. You got to.
Yep.
And so if you're on the Bucks, if you could parlay it with that race to 30, Bucks 250, you'll get good odds on that. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. As you go through these props, try to correlate your picks together as much as you can, so that if one hits, multiple will hit.
The thing that sucks with props too, though, it doesn't suck, but I mean, the thing that is difficult is only like the national sites or like the big conglomerates like FanDuel and DraftKings, like those are the only ones that let you parlay these. Like a lot of sites, like you can't parlay props, which is such a bummer because like I would love to throw together like 4 or 5 props just at a feeler, just to try to see if I could get some good odds on something. And that's not the case with unless you live in like Michigan or where the legal states for gambling. There's like 6 of them. Unless you live in one of those states, you can't really do it. So that's what's a bummer.
Yeah, I use one of the offshore sites. I use Bovada, and they are getting more creative in terms of their product offering. So like I hit on one last week that was pretty inventive. It was Mahomes and Josh Allen to have 600 plus combined pass yards, 5 plus combined touchdowns, so passing or rushing. And then Hill, Diggs, and Kelsey to have 150 plus combined receiving yards and 2 plus touchdowns. I almost felt like every single part of that parlay was a lock. Just to have Mahomes and Allen going against each other, of course they're going to hit 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. Oh yeah, and then Hill, Diggs, and Kelsey, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kelsey took care of that himself. Yeah. So yeah, that was 5-1 odds in that hit. And so if you're looking at Bovada, I those all were corollary types of picks, right? Which I'm thinking the over is going to hit, so I'm looking at comboing the top quarterback with the top wide receivers, punching the yards, punching the touchdowns for all of those guys, and it boosts my odds incredibly. And I was able to find a situation where it made sense, and all of a sudden, $20 turns into $120. Hello, not bad.
Nice. All right, buddy.
So if you're using Bovada, definitely look at some of these props.
Like
They'll probably be available.
I gotta give it a look. Some other props just to roll back into it. I kind of like Fournette to score the first Bucks TD. I think the rushing game is going to be crucial for Tampa Bay. I think they're going to these running backs Fournette and Ronald Jones are going to have to come up big for them. I think. I have a hunch. I think Fournette might score the first touchdown, or I actually kind of like a long shot in Scotty Miller. I think Scotty Miller might be a guy to look his way for a big catcher to this game. I like his opportunity as a long shot. He's like plus 1150. So if you could nail on one of these guys, and if you want to take a risk, if you have the ability to just kind of throw some cash around to try to hit a long shot, you could do worse than some of these. I like Mahomes to score the first touchdown for the Chiefs. It's plus 1150. So it'd have to be a rushing touchdown. Um, Even if like they get in close within like 10 yards, that's when Mahomes is a real big threat to, rush one in. Plus 1150. I thought those were good odds on FanDuel. Um, Longest touchdown. I like this one over 46 and a half. I think there's going to be a long play in this one. Just the amount of explosive players in this game. I
There's
think
going to be
that,
a lot of opportunities for that
yeah,
bet to hit, and you're going to be in the game with that bet till the very end because the last play of the game could very well be a
yeah,
45-yard touchdown,
yeah.
46-yard.
So over 46 and a half, you're not going to get great odds on that. I think it's like minus 120 or minus 110 or so. So you're not going to get great odds, but I mean, I just feel like, I mean, it's a fun one to root for because you get to root for a big play, and that's always good or entertaining to watch. Patrick Mahomes, his longest completion, it kind of correlates with this idea of a big play is bound to happen. If you think that the Chiefs are going to be that team, you could say over 42 yards at minus 130. The under on that's even odds. So if you think that the Chiefs if you're not high on them in this game, you could go on the under, but I'm leaning over on that one. Team to score first wins. And I wanted to say no. I always want to say no on this prop whether or not the team that scores first wins. But you look at the last 10 Super Bowls, eight of the last 10 Super Bowls, the first team that scored won. Last year, the Niners scored first. So that was one of the oddities.
I was just going to say the Chiefs might be the team that usually breaks that cycle
Yeah,
more than often. Looking throughout their entire season and just last week again, they're not a team that typically scores first, but they're a team that typically wins.
yeah.
So
I, I,
there
I
might be
have a
some value in
hunch.
the no.
I have a hunch in the no in this one,
Yep.
but the stats say yes, and so that's where the smart money is going to be. But if you guess no, you're gonna get like plus 135, plus 150, some decent odds there.
And again, the Bucks are the home team, so we kind of expect them to score first, more well rested. They're going to be more comfortable, come out of the gates firing. Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. I love the Bucks to score first, but I love the Chiefs to be able to return the punches pretty easily.
Definitely.
I
To-
love the value there. It's a great one.
Total punts. This was a lock for me. 6.5 is the line. You got to go under on that, right? I mean, come on. There's not gonna be 6.5. There's not going to be 7 punts in this game. I thought under 6.5 was a lock for me in this prop. A 2-point conversion attempt. I'm gonna go yes. Plus 105 about plus 110. I think there's a good chance for a 2-point conversion attempt, just the way that the game's playing nowadays. And if you think that the 2-point conversion attempt is a good one, you might as well just do successful 2-point conversion because the odds are gonna be almost double. If you go successful 2-point conversion, it's plus 220 for yes. No would be minus 270. That's a fun one to root for. Will there be a lead change in the fourth quarter? This is a fun one for me. Yes is plus 220. No is minus 270. It's unlikely, but if it happens, it's a good one.
It's one you want to root for too, because that means we're watching an awesome game. So, it might be one just to emotionally bet on, just hoping for a good challenge.
Definitely. All right, this is a good game. This is a good bet for me. I sprinkled a little change on this one. Team to gain the most rushing yards. So who's gonna have more rushing yards this year? I mean, this game. And the Chiefs have on average more rushing yards per game on the season. But for me in this matchup, I'm taking the Bucks minus 105. Chiefs
Yeah.
are minus 125. So the Chiefs are favored in this pick. I think I'm locking the Bucks in this one because look, the Chiefs are 31st in rush DVOA on the year. 31st. They're very bad against the rush. They're good against the pass. They're not good against the rush. I'm gonna go, and the Bucks are first in rush DVOA.
Yeah, they're
So
first in rush D.
Yep, you got teams on
And then the
opposite spectrum
offensive line, they're doing a
Yep.
complete shuffle. Eric
Yep.
Fisher out.
So this
What?
was a lock for me.
Yeah.
Bucks with the most
Great
rushing yards in the
pinpoint.
game. The reason that the Chiefs are favored in this one is because the thought is they think that the Chiefs are going to get a lead and then start running the ball. But that's not even what the Chiefs do. Even when they
No.
have leads, they still attack through the passing game with. I mean, if they're trying to manage a clock, they do like 5 to 6 yard passes or so.
Right, absolutely.
So I like this one. Bucks to score to have the most rushing yards. Last score of the game. What will it be? A touchdown or anything else? So anything else would be a field goal or a safety. kind of like the opportunity for a field goal for the last score of the game, plus 150. I mean, that's you sprinkle a little change on that. A field goal is not unheard of as the last score of the game, even like a last second field goal. And both these two teams are so great at the 2 minute drill, where operating late with little clock to go. Mahomes and Brady are masters at that. Those are probably the two quarterbacks you pick for a 2 minute drill
Right.
with the
And
game
I
on the line.
think one thing important to mention is both of their kickers are very solid. Harrison Butker and Ryan Suckup were extremely, extremely consistent all year long, especially in a season where a lot of guys were injured, a lot of guys missed a lot of field goals. Both of those guys definitely will be able to convert in high pressure situations. So, fourth quarter, you're thinking, Super Bowl, a lot of missed kicks. Well, I think these guys can easily convert on that bet.
Well, I didn't write this down, but a missed field goal is actually good odds. You can get like plus 200 or so on if you think there's going to be a missed field goal. I
Yeah,
saw
I think part of that is those kickers are pretty accurate, right? Which is probably
yeah,
hurting the odds.
yeah. One thing I thought was funny, just a side note, I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast, and cousin Sal was like, one of his favorite props to throw on this year, whether or not a ball is going to hit an upright. So not a crossbar, one of the uprights. He's like, he's got good odds on it. I think it was like
That's
plus
crazy.
like two something.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think it's happened like three or four times this postseason. So he
Mm-hmm.
had Justin Tucker hit 2 in one game.
Mm-hmm.
But that was super windy. I wouldn't bet on that, but that was funny. This prop's a lock for me. Whether or not the Chiefs convert a fourth down, you got to lock in the yes. I mean, it's minus 150, so you're not getting great value, but I mean, I think that's a for sure thing. The Chiefs are definitely going to convert a fourth down for me. You can talk about the Bucs trying to convert a fourth down. I mean, the thing with the Bucs is I don't know how effective they are on fourth down. The Chiefs are an incredibly gifted fourth down team. We've seen it throughout the postseason, especially. I mean, look at that Chad Henne play against the Browns. I mean, that was what anybody was talking about that 1 week after that game. The Chiefs are got to be a lock for a fourth down conversion. The another one, some player props here we're getting into here. Travis Kelce, 8.5 receptions is the over underline. I lean under, and the reason I lean under is look, Kelsey's only gone over on that reception total twice this year. So I mean, everybody's optimistic about Kelsey's opportunity for a big game this game in the Super Bowl, but he's not. You could still catch 8 passes and have an awesome game. He doesn't
Right.
need
You can
he
go
doesn't need
eight for 130 and two,
yeah.
you know.
So that's a high line. I lean under on 8.5. Tyreek Hill, 7 receptions is the over underline. I saw it at 7.5, and I think I got bet down to 7 because I lean under there as well. Tyreek Hill has not had many games set with 7 catches or more. He actually does. He's had a lot of games like with 4 or 5 catches, and he has a long play of like 45 plus yards. So his biggest thing is if you want to bet on a big Tyreek Hill game, bet on the yardage or bet on the longest reception. Don't bet on the receptions here.
Yeah, I think a lot of the sharps are going to be on the unders because people in general like rooting for overs. So
Yeah.
Vegas sets the lines higher because they know that, us suckers who love points and fireworks, we're going to bet the over no matter how high they set the line. So if you want to be a sharp better, it might make sense that a couple of these to pick your spots and find where the under has some value.
Yeah. I kind of like Nicole Harmon's opportunity to beat his projections. His over under reception total was 2.5. I like his opportunity to catch 3 passes. I also like his opportunity to have a long reception of over 15.5 yards. I think Nicole Harmon could be a guy that, if obviously the Bucs are going to be trying to scheme defensively against Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. I mean, as best as you can. I mean, those guys are going to have good games regardless, but they're going to be trying to focus a lot of attention on those guys. Maybe Mahomes looks Miko Hardman's way a few times in the game. I like his opportunity to beat those projections. Anytime scorer too with Hardman, he's plus 200 or so, plus 250 almost. I like that opportunity as well. I think Hardman could be a decent guy to sprinkle a little long shot money on. Byron Pringle, this is a lock for me. Byron Pringle for the Chiefs. Total receptions 1.5. Hammer the under. Look, Demarcus Robinson, as long as he plays, I know he's in the COVID protocol. He's been testing negative all week. Him and Kilgore with the weird story about the barber, or mid haircut. Kilgore was mid haircut. Barber tested positive. He's like, finish the cut. Demarcus Robinson, though, as long as he plays, look, Byron Pringle's going to be the 5th receiver in this Kansas City wide receiver tree, and Pringle's going to be in there for maybe 5 plays tops. he's not going to catch 2 passes. So hammer the under. Got a little money on Byron Pringle under 1.5 receptions. This one is a good one for me too. Darrell Williams rush attempts 7.5. Hammer the over. Last 3 games, 13 carries, 10 carries in his last 3. Darrell Williams has been a big part of what Kansas City has tried to do on the ground the last few games when they've been succeeding. I still don't know how healthy CEH is. I like Darrell Williams for his opportunity to run the ball at least 8 times in this game. Another one, Townsend, the Kansas City punter. Long punt under 52.5. For me, it goes back to this thing. I don't think there's a chance that Townsend doesn't punt the ball once in this game. So if that's the case, I mean, I don't like his opportunity to punt the ball further than 52.5. But again, that's kind of a long shot play. Over under, you're not going to get great odds on that. So not that fun to bet on that one. This one is a good one for me. Tyrann Mathieu. And assist tackles. So combined tackles being involved in 4.5 is the over underline. I'm liking the over on that one. I think Tyrann Mathieu is going to be in store for a big game. The guy is a great story, someone, a great person you root for, has been involved in a lot of great things with his community. Someone that is just due for a big game in a performance like this. I mean, I know he won the Super Bowl again last year. He's looking for another one this year. He's just someone you want to root for. 4.5, that's not a lot. He's averaged more than that this season. So Tyrann Mathieu has been heavily involved in the Chiefs defense the last few weeks. Been playing really well. I think he's going to have at least 5 tackles in this game. Another one, total Bucks to have a rush attempt. The over under line on this is 3.5 players. So the path to over on this is Jones and Fournette obviously are getting a carry. Maybe Brady gets a carry. And then it'll have to be like a wide receiver. So I'm picking the under on this. I don't think that you're going to see both Brady and a receiver get a carry. I think it's one or the other. I'm going under 3.5 players to get a carry for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers running.
Right. That's definitely more of the Chiefs thing to run, the wide receiver rushes as opposed to what the Bucks do. I don't remember many situations where I've seen that.
Yeah, these guys don't run a lot of trick plays either. It's a lot of, straightforward. It's not straightforward is the wrong word, but they're not doing like flea flickers or like, what they do. The thing with the Pats where they used to throw the ball backwards to Edelman and he would throw it forward. Or they don't do a lot of that stuff with either of these two teams. So I definitely like this one under 3. Three or less people to have carries for the Buccaneers. I like that one. This one. The only worry that I have would be if Keyshawn Vaughn gets involved in the rushing attack, because then you if you throw Keyshawn Vaughn in there, then that's 3 right there, and then you can't afford another one. So that's the only worry I have. Bucks first half rush touchdown. I like the yes plus 150 in the first half. If they're going to score a rushing touchdown, you think you'd be in the first half because that's going to be what their game plan you think is going to be. They're going to be trying to come out and establish the run, set a pace of play, and I like the yes plus 150. No is minus 190. So without any value there. I think that the Bucks have an opportunity to Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones to punch one, and maybe even Brady sneaks one in. So the Bucks to convert a 4th down, like I mentioned before, the yes is minus 140. The no is plus 115. I lean yes on that, but I think they're going to attempt a 4th down conversion. I don't know that they will get it. That's the big thing. Because if the bet was whether or not the Bucks are going to attempt a 4th down conversion, you hammer that every day. Bucks total sacks. This is a good one for me. Over 1.5. I'm hammering this one. I think that the Bucks are going to be trying to get a lot of pressure on Mahomes. Mahomes hasn't had a lot of pressure sent his way during the playoffs. I think he has 1 sack throughout the playoffs so far. But the issues with the offensive line. Mahomes was sacked a decent amount during the regular season, and if he's going to try to extend plays with his legs, it just takes 2 sacks. I mean, you got a very talented Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, the second best defense that they faced all year. Like I said, I like the opportunity for at least 2 sacks for the Bucs, Steve.
Yeah, I think that's certainly going to be the game plan. A lot of pressure, so even if you wanted to tease it up one more and get better odds, I don't think it's a bad bet either.
Definitely. Fournette total rushing and receiving yards. I like the over 75.5. I think Lenny Fournette's playoff Lenny is in store for
playoff Lenny, dude. He's been killing it. Like, why not keep the streak going? He's on the field a ton, and he's clearly the pass catching back for this team. So even if they get down big, he's not going to get phased out because of the game script.
Yeah. And then I like Evans total receiving yards over 66 and a half. I think Evans is physically the most talented receiver that the Buccaneers have. And then he's a huge red zone target. So I would look either at both possibly the over receiving yards and anytime scorer for Mike Evans. I think he's going to be a guy that Brady looks to, especially in the red zone. I also like Chris Godwin over 5.5 receptions. I think Godwin, like we talked about throughout the podcast, I think he's in store for a good game. I think Brady's going to have to look his way, especially on a lot of those small slant patterns, the flat routes. He's going to be looking his way for those.
Yeah, I think he'll at least be heavily targeted. The question is, does he actually make the catches? I think he does.
Yeah. Antonio Brown, I'm hammering the under on his reception total, 3.5. I don't know that he's healthy. This thing with the knee seemed like it was a bigger issue. He missed last week. I mean, I know he got the 2 weeks rest coming off the conference championship, but I'm going to go under Antonio Brown, 3.5 receptions. That's still, I mean, he could still catch 3 passes and have a decent game, maybe a touchdown. But, he hasn't had too many games over that total. So in the Super Bowl, we'll see how that plays out. I'd like the under.
He's been the lowest volume wide receiver of the big 3 on that team. So it certainly wouldn't be surprised considering his current injury status if he were less involved than the other 2.
Yeah. I like Cameron Brate for over 2.5 receptions. I think Brate's been the go-to guy for Brady in the middle route trees for the Tampa Bay during the playoffs. He's been looking his way a lot during these postseason games. Cameron Brate's been having a good postseason, and I like his opportunity to catch at least 3 passes in this one.
And I almost wish there was a bet between, like, you could take the tight end receptions for
Gronk and
exactly, for the Bucs, because I think one of them has a good game. I'm not sure if they both do, but between the tight end position, I think they're in for like 7 or 8 catches.
For me, with Gronk, it's not about the receptions. I like the touchdown opportunity. Anytime scorer for Gronk, he's like plus 225 or so. I think Gronk catches a touchdown in this one. I heard I think on the RJ Bell podcast, I think he had the Hitman. He calls him. He's a Vegas sharp gambler, and one of his best bets is the Gronk anytime touchdown catch. He thinks Brady's going to look his way when he gets uncomfortable or when he needs like that clutch catch, a big play. He's going to look Gronk's way because he's just so comfortable with them. I like the reasoning there too. A Buccaneer guy that I really like for a big game, as long as they continue the trend of this defensive effectiveness that they've been going through the last few weeks. Devin White, solo and assisted tackles, combined tackles on the game. I like it to be over 9.5. He's hit that over in his last 3 postseason games. He had 15 tackles last week, 11 the week before, and 10 the week before that. He's been an absolute monster on the field for them, and especially with a lot of the guys banged up on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. I think Devin White's going to have to lead them to, if they're going to win this game, he's going to have to lead them to victory. Scotty Miller, another guy I mentioned earlier, someone an anytime scorer plus 225. I like his opportunity for a touchdown. Brady and Mahomes anytime scorers. So whether or not you think Brady or Mahomes are going to score a rushing touchdown, I mean, Brady is the king of those little 1-yard sneaks. Plus 350, those are good odds. So Brady plus 350, Mahomes is plus 160 anytime scorers. Fournette, if you combine Fournette anytime scorer with a Bucs win, it's about plus 350, plus 325. I saw on the website I use, probably better on FanDuel or something. I like that opportunity. I think that if the Bucs win, it could be correlated with a good game with Lenny Fournette. Some long shot MVPs for the game. Obviously the quarterbacks are most likely to win MVP. But if you want to pick a non-quarterback MVP, I kind of like the opportunities for a defensive player for the Buccaneers to win it. Devin White, Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaquille Barrett. Those guys are going to be. That's
where you're going to get the 50 or like 100 to 1 odds. That's where the value is if you're going to go non-quarterback. I tend to agree. I think either you take the quarterback on whatever team you think is going to win, or maybe you just take the team, frankly, depending on whatever the odds are for MVP. But if you really want to bet the award and get the value, go for a defensive player. I think out of the last 9 Super Bowls, like 4 of them have been a non-quarterback. So there is some opportunity. Even going back to when the Broncos won the Super Bowl, you think of like a Von Miller type of game where guy has a few sacks and creates a couple fumbles. That's certainly how we are scripting a Bucks win. So if you think the Bucks win, there's a good chance it could be a defensive player, if it's not one of those classic Brady games.
Yeah, I mean, and for the Chiefs, if the Chiefs win, it's gonna be Mahomes. Because
Yeah,
I mean, look, Damian Williams should have won MVP in my opinion last year, and if he didn't win it last year, Mahomes beat him out for it. I don't know how anybody beats Mahomes for the MVP
right.
race. If the Chiefs win, Mahomes is gonna have 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that's gonna win him the MVP. So
Right. What's the game script for another offensive player on the Chiefs to win
it would
Super
have
Bowl
to be another
MVP?
Tyreek Hill game. It would have to be what he did in Week 12, like 13 catches, 250 yards, and 3 touchdowns, something like that.
Yeah, and even at that point, though, that probably means that Mahomes has 350 yards
It
and
would be the
4 touchdowns or
touchdowns. It would
five
be about the
touchdowns. So,
touchdowns.
yeah, he literally needs to have probably half of the passing touchdowns, and he probably needs to have like a 40-yard rushing touchdown for him to win. So I don't know if Travis Kelce can get there because he doesn't have that rushing ability where
Yeah,
he can
an
get a
end around for
touchdown
Tyreek Hill.
without the Mahomes benefit. The key is, can you get a score for a player without Mahomes benefiting from the score in order to hedge that MVP point? So I think if you are going to take an offensive player, go for Tyreek Hill over Travis Kelce. Otherwise, I think it's just Mahomes really on the Chiefs.
Cool. Any thoughts on some other props for this game?
Yeah, I went through the site, and aside from the ones you have covered on here and that I chirped in on, there was one I really liked, and it was just to have the most points scored in the second quarter. So both of these teams throughout the season had most of their points scored in the second quarter, out of each quarter. So in a situation like that, where each team seems to play their best football in the second quarter, that should only lead to even more explosive second quarter scoring. Little tit for tat, where I think, in the Super Bowl, there's tends to be a lot of jitters in the first quarter. Second quarter, we see a lot of scoring. Third quarter, the pace of play typically slows down. And then the fourth quarter, we see a pickup in scoring again, just because, with the time limit being extended, with timeouts and things of that nature, and teams really trying to fill up the score to come back. We could see the fourth quarter, but I think the second quarter is where you're going to find the best odds.
Yeah, the second quarter is the highest. Well, the second quarter is going to be the worst odds, but you're probably right in that you're still going to get positive value. I think it's like plus 150 or so, maybe up to like plus 175. I'm trying to look up what the highest scoring quarter was for their Week 12 matchup, and I believe it was the second quarter. No, it was the first. It was the first. I mean, there was 17 points in the first quarter for Kansas City. Second was 10. Third was 10. Fourth was 14 for the Buccaneers. So yeah, the second quarter, you're right, is going to be a one to target, especially because I mean you got an opportunity for like a last second field goal, maybe a late touchdown towards the end of the half. The 2 minute drill really starts to push teams along, and so that's when you look at this stat, which quarter is going to have the most points. Teams try to focus on the end of the second and the end of the fourth quarter. So those are your best bets, the second and the third and the fourth, because in the first or the third, if there's like 1 minute left or 30 seconds left, the teams don't care. They don't care how much time is left because they know that they're going to still have the ball when they go into the next quarter. So that's at the end of the second and the fourth quarter, they're pressing to try to get the ball, into either field goal range or into the end zone.
Definitely. And that's
All
when
right,
you're also going to be more aggressive with things like onside kicks in that nature, because time is playing a factor.
definitely. All right, let's roll into some DFS for the week. DFS has played out a little bit strange for the Super Bowl. You got 6 guys you kind of just flex into your lineup. Some guys you think are going to be the best values, and we have some similar takes here. But Connor, before we got into our picks for this week, why don't you tell me about how we did last?
Yeah, so last week was the last week of the regular tournament style play. We had the 4 teams, and both you and I cashed once again. The score was 157.9 for me and 157.2 for you. So a big 0.7 point win for me right there. I cashed in, took it to the bank,
I think you
rubbed
beat
your
me, right?
face in it, everything. Oh
You
yeah,
well, you
crushed
beat
you.
me. No, you beat me in the season long tally between best lineup of the week, right?
It's very close. I beat you in terms of average score, but there were a lot of games where you just edged me out. So where my average winning total was higher, in the games where I won, the game you might actually have won more games on the season in the head-to-head. But yeah, last week again did really well over 50%. I think we're right around 70% cashing
Yeah.
on the season, which is what you want to see. This week certainly going to be harder than most though, because like you said, different format. We only have two teams, so it's the head-to-head style this time around where you have to pick a captain. The captain is 1.5 times the salary of their typical week and also 1.5 times the points. So just a little bit of different strategy, something that you and I are less attuned to. So, don't hold us as accountable on this one if we screw it up. Look at our 18 or 20 game
Yeah,
sample size before that.
if our listeners listen to anything that we talk about on our podcast, it's the DFS. You gotta listen to us on DFS. I mean, we did really well on the season. That was some of our best advice we had throughout the year, and we'll see how we do in the Super Bowl. Like you said, it's a little bit strange, and it seems like there's not a lot of room for creativity with this style of
Mm.
lineup. But we'll see how we'll go through our selections and we'll see where we match up and our thoughts here.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, what it came down to was I want Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill in my lineup. And when there's only six spots, that's three guys. And obviously, those three guys are going to be three of the most heavily utilized, but also three of the most expensive players. So it definitely put me in a situation where I was very constricted. So that I had to find some deep dive value plays. And to fill out the rest of my roster, I was like, okay, well, Rob Gronkowski's only 3,000. I think he is a great bet for a touchdown, like we mentioned earlier in the podcast. And then Ronald Jones, I made my captain just because he was so cheap. Coming in that captain position, he's only 3,300. He was given double-digit carries last week. I think he's able to be a lot more effective on the ground and has plenty of opportunity to score a touchdown. Kansas City's weaker on the ground than through the air. And then to round out my lineup, I have Tom Brady. Quarterbacks are the safest bet typically in DFS and fantasy. So to fill up my roster, I'm happy to get both quarterbacks and both experienced quarterbacks in the Super Bowl on my roster.
Yeah, having both quarterbacks is like a cheat code. Uh, I went with Leonard Fournette in my team captain spot, and I've talked about him a number of times on this podcast already. I think he's in store for a good game. He ended up being $11,700, being priced at 1.5 times his normal price. But I have a feeling he's going to score a touchdown in this game, and I think he's going to be able to hit that over on his over yardage totals of 75.5. I think Leonard Fournette's going to be a big part of the offensive game plan for Tampa Bay. And like I said, a lot of the effectiveness for the Buccaneers, the first go around with the Chiefs, was the running back catches out of the backfield. And I think Fournette's a better, going to be more involved in the passing game for the Buccaneers in this one too. Um, and I've been rolling through with this strategy throughout the playoffs now is, I'm trying to combat the guys that have Patrick Mahomes by having his top two pass weapons, because I don't have Mahomes in my lineup, but I do have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. So if Mahomes has a good game, it's likely also that Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill also have good games. So I'm kind of combating, that by having his two top guys. I have Kelce for 11,000 and Tyreek Hill for 10,400. I have Tom Brady for 10,000. I like his opportunity for, Tom Brady's the top graded player or quarterback for Pro Football Focus this season. It's not Patrick Mahomes. And Brady, I mean, he's not unfamiliar with Super Bowls. This is his 10th Super Bowl.
Yeah, I heard they gave him MVP runner-up to Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, did they?
PFF did, yeah.
Okay. The other guys I have in my lineup: Scotty Miller, $3,400, and then Rob Gronkowski for 3,000. Some guys that I think could be decent values because Brady does like to kind of spread the ball around a little bit.
Yeah, I think we did a good job finding the value plays. Both of us keyed in on similar types of players. We're going with that Tampa Bay running back in the top spot, and I think that's mostly just out of a value play because I think, we like Kelce, Hill, or Mahomes better, but you throw 1.5 times their salary in that captain position, and it's almost impossible to fill out the rest of your roster.
Yeah. I can't I was trying to figure out who I would play on the Chiefs other than Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, or Patrick Mahomes. And I really don't think that I would consider another receiver because you have no idea who else. I mean, it's possible someone else catches a touchdown, but I am not going to play Sammy Watkins. I'm not going to play. I mean,
I
Demarcus Robinson
don't.
hasn't practiced
Yeah.
all week. Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a little bit healthier than you'd think. Maybe he gets a
Catch
little
some
bit more involved.
passes if the run game is
And then
completely
the only
stifled,
other
the short
guy,
pass game.
yeah, the only guy I would consider besides those three is maybe Darrell Williams. And I talked about him earlier on the podcast. I like his
Yeah.
opportunity to have more than 7.5 carries. So I think
I
maybe
don't
Darrell
hate
Williams might be
Mecole
something.
Hardman too as
True.
a
I forgot about that one.
possible long shot.
Mecole Hardman could be a decent long shot as well.
He's kind of like a Scotty Miller-esque play where, it's going to be low volume, but if he catches 3 or 4 passes, there's a good chance he could be up near 80 yards at a touchdown. So, those two guys could be an option, but I think you're right. Outside of him as a long shot, you kind of want to stick to your main guys and your pillars.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Connor, that's it for our DFS. That's it for our podcast for this week. Had a lot of fun going over this, man. This podcast got me amped for the game, dude. I'm so ready for this. I'm ready for this Super Bowl weekend. I can't wait for this game. So much fun. So many fun things to watch for this game. And what's kind of have a Super Bowl like this is I'm not a fan of either of these two teams. Like I don't have any like super personal investment. I just want a good game. I want to see two teams battle it out. I want to see knockout punch after knockout punch. I want to see guys go back and forth. I want to see fourth quarter lead exchanges. I want to see overtime. I want to see all of it, So let's see.
I'm itching, man. Last game of the season, and I think we're in store for some fireworks. It was a great Super Bowl-a-palooza, Prop-a-palooza episode, DFS finale. Like, I think we absolutely crushed it, man. And this weekend's going to be fun. Either way, there's going to be some money to be won for us and our listeners.
Definitely. And then everybody listening to our podcast throughout the year, really appreciate all the support we've gotten. We've really grown as a podcast, and then as a company, as all things analysis starts to transition to being more present on our online website, allthingsanalysis.com.
Yeah.
We're
New platform.
a lot of great things. Garrett, our statistical guru, has been getting a lot of good work done on some NBA prop predictor stuff. He's been doing really well with that. Connor has a podcast he's got in the works. He's working on focused around finance, and we'll see how that goes. And looking forward to just a lot of new opportunities we got here going at All Things Analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning, Ben. And, for the first time, I think we're going to have this episode available for everyone's viewership on YouTube too. So where typically Vicious Talk has been only a podcast available on podcast services, get ready, guys, because I think you're going to start seeing our faces too.
Oh no. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Please follow All Things Analysis on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're on YouTube, like Connor mentioned as well. Also, please subscribe, rate, review Vicious Talk with Benny P on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Podcast One. You give us a review on our YouTube page as well. Really appreciate all the support, like we said. It's been a really fun season. Really looking forward to this, the cherry on the top of the sundae of what's been really what could have been a much worse and much more difficult NFL year. Just kudos to the league and to the players for being able to accomplish this whole thing. Really hoping to just finish the year out on a strong note. Hopefully that some of our analysis and handicapping that we had throughout this podcast, resonates with our listeners, and we're able to, do well with some of the predictions that we had.
Absolutely.
Right,
Thanks so much, Ben, for having me on, man.
All right, buddy. Let me leave everybody out with one last question. Let me ask you, are you vicious?